Shalom, Brukaba. Welcome. Sorry for the slight delay. We had a bit of tech issues, and I also got home super late. I got home like 15 minutes ago. So, getting everything set up, getting everything working. I'm joined again today with Israel Horowitz. Uh, Rabbi, thank you for coming on. Excited to talk to you again. I really enjoyed our last conversation.
Same
Those who
here.
didn't see it, you can check it out last week. But this week we will hopefully we'll see how this goes because tangents and whatnot. We'll talk a little bit about the rabbinic position and how it differs from the Torah, and maybe some of the underlying problems of the rabbinic position and why Jews should reject it, not just like Christians or anyone else, but like why Jews should reject the Orthodox position. Um, so,
Yeah, well said. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I did see you didn't change the banner again. So,
oh yeah, just turn that off right now. Okay.
so who was Aisha?
Aisha is the youngest wife of Muhammad that he married when she was 6.
Oh man, he would have
Mhm.
liked to be part of Jeffrey Epstein's cabal, huh?
He was way worse than Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah. He saw an infant crawling around and he declared his intent to marry her. So, and
Okay.
that's in his biography. That's in the life of Muhammad, Rasul Allah. Sira, anyway, so we have Muhammad being really attracted to very, very, very young girls. So he had um, an enchanted dream of Aisha whenever she was 5, and told his best friend, who he considered a brother, to marry her because that was his daughter. So it was basically his like niece. Now it was like familial, not like blood ties, but like relationship ties. Like, and the guy responded with, "How can you ask me to marry her? You're my brother." And he's like, "But we're not blood brothers, so it's fine." Um, Kind of a skeezy guy. I mean, no one should be following Muhammad. Anyway,
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, I talked to a Muslim guy who said he only believes in the Quran, and he says that all the other writings are external to the Quran. So
you can definitely have that position. It's just not
it
super
might help.
coherent.
It might
Right.
help
It
a little
definitely
bit.
it helps a little bit, but the Quran itself allows it. So in a little off topic, just a little tangent for those who are not aware, but in Surah 65:4, it allows you to marry girls that are prepubescent, and it doesn't actually have a lower age limit. So you can technically marry infants under just Quran only Islam.
Mm.
So
Well, I think that really connects to what we want to talk about today, which is the Torah being the standard of law for everyone who counts themselves among Abrahamic faiths. Because
right.
no matter how you see the history progressing after that, one thing is very clear that the foundation of the faith is revealed to us by God through Moses. And Moses is actually the one who's recording the history of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob post Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by 500 years. And he's talking about the past 2,000 years of history preceding him, which is really the beginning of modern civilization. Even by scientific terms, documented human history goes back to about 6,000 years ago, the Sumerian period, where you have civilization begin to emerge under human beings writing things down, having language, having the tablets. There's lots of coinciding stories with the biblical stories of Genesis, like the creation, the garden, the flood, the tower, all these things. That is the original history of mankind, and it's brought down in many forms. And that just corroborates the Torah. It doesn't disprove the Torah. The thing about the Torah is that it's claimed to be the revelation from Yahweh to Moses. Um, so that's actually um, Yahweh revealing himself to Moses there.
Yeah,
Okay.
which
So
fully agree. Um, so there are people pointing out that your microphone is low. I turned my mic
okay.
down. Hopefully my mic can be low enough that people can just turn the volume up and we're at the same level. So if I'm still louder than him, let me know, then I'll turn my mic down a little bit more. Then everyone can just turn their mics or their volume up.
Do you think I should just change to the regular mic? I think I should do
You
that.
can. I mean, if it is just not going to work, it's not going to work. So we were having that's part of the tech difficulties that we were having before we went live. I'll just turn that back on. Um, he
Okay.
was having issues with that microphone being too quiet. I don't think he has the right preamp, or he doesn't have the settings great for it yet. But I'm gonna change his mic settings so it's hopefully not as loud
Okay.
for everyone.
Is this
But
better, by the way? Is this good?
that's definitely louder, yeah.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, I was trying to be a little more technologically advanced beyond my scope. But yeah,
Yeah,
anyhow, apologies. But for anyone who didn't hear what I said, I was basically saying that from whatever context of faith you come from, whether you're coming from a Christian background, a Muslim background, a Jewish background, uh, you have to refer back to the foundation of all of it. It's inarguably the five books of Moses, is inarguably the
right.
Torah. And the claim of the Torah is that this is the original world history of mankind being presented through a lens that Yahweh himself, who is calling himself the creator and the one God, um, he's coming and revealing this through Moses and telling us this is actually what happened, right? This is actually how it is. And for anyone who believes in that faith, you would be extremely dishonest to reject the Torah as the foundation here. um, and that's the bottom line. The bottom line is that people have tried for thousands of years to move past the Torah, to move beyond the Torah, as if uh, that is still not relevant. But it's extremely relevant because our conception of morality and understanding of creation all the way to this point is shaped by that narrative. And I think we'd all be doing ourselves a great service uh, from whatever faith tradition we come from or whatever perspective we come from to familiarize ourselves with the foundation of the Bible itself, which is the Torah.
Right. Yeah. Especially I would say Muslims because they don't have the law. But Christians too, like we definitely are biblically illiterate at scale. Like most Christians have never read the Bible or read very surface level things of it. But even the Christians who read the Bible on a regular basis, they don't read the Torah anywhere near as much as they should. We have Torah illiteracy in all groups, and it is a crying shame because the Torah is super awesome. Like I think we can all like collectively agree if you study the Torah from both ancient history and the context it was set in, and even by today's standards, it's an amazing book. The morality taught within it is revolutionary. It's still like the gold standard even for today. And people don't get that because they have very skewed versions of what the Torah is even teaching. Like, oh, it teaches slavery. And it's like, that's not really slavery. Like, the type of slavery that everyone else was doing, you would be put to death for doing it under the Torah. Like, or like, oh, it's discriminatory against women. It's like, it's really not. Like, gives protections for both pregnant women and the unborn and like all these things. It's like it's such a revolutionary book in terms of its morality, but also in terms of its logic and reasoning and its relationship between God and man, where we are made in the image of God, all people created equal, and we also have God coming down because he loves us and making covenants with us and caring not only for the Jews but also for the Gentiles, that the Jews are meant to be a light to mankind, that we all come under Torah, or at least we all come under Yahweh and have relationship to him. Um, even like, do you? What's your view on the Noahide laws? I'm curious because you reject the rabbinic position.
Yeah, of course. Because of that, the Noahide laws are a fabrication of a rabbinic ideology.
Right.
It's a product of saying, first of all, I mean, nowhere in the Torah does it say that God gave Noah seven laws. That's not in the
Correct.
Torah. I mean, all we
Right.
see is God telling Noah about murder and about consuming blood. Those are the
Right.
two commandments that God tells Noah after the flood. It's quite clear that God does not approve of idolatry and violence and evil. Um, but again, the Noahide laws are a list put together by the rabbis, a list that the rabbis think that they can just present to non-Jews to push them away from the Torah. In fact, part and parcel of the Jewish conversion process, which is nowhere to be found in the Torah, by the way, states that you must push non-Jews away who want to learn about the Torah. Non-Jews are actually not allowed to read the Torah unless they're going through an Orthodox Jewish conversion. This flies in the face of anything the Torah teaches. The Torah has a profoundly human approach to life, and something that I find to be very powerful is that the covenant that God makes with Israel, and this is specified in the end of Deuteronomy, uh, chapter 29, where it talks about the fact that God is making a covenant with all people, whether they're there that day or whether they're not there that day, whether they're a native Israelite or whether they're someone who's sojourning amongst Israel who's not native. Uh, And God calls all of those people who enter into the oath, again, whether there or not, whether natively bloodline Israel or not, to be the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to enter into the covenant all together as one. And that's a future that looks a lot like an expansive vision for Israel that's not limited to a bloodline covenant, but rather to a faith-based covenant. In fact, someone who lived amongst Israel, who was not from a Jewish bloodline but followed the Torah, would have more of a place in Israel than someone who is natively, ethnically Jewish who doesn't
Right.
follow the Torah, because there are all sorts of penalties for that that include excommunication and even death. So, um, modernly, the Jewish people all identify with their Judaism being their
Mm.
culture, their tradition, their heritage, not the Torah, not the covenant, not the law. So read here in Deuteronomy 29, verses 9 through 14. That's what I was just referencing. It specifically says, all of you, including your sojourning converts, all of you are considered as ancestors, that your ancestors are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I think that's very powerful, because what does Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob mean? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the personification
Patriarchs.
of patriarchs of the Yahwistic faith, where Yah tells Moses when he encounters him, I am Yahweh. This is Exodus chapter 3, or
3:14.
yeah,
Yeah.
I am Yahweh. This is my remembrance for all time. And I am Yahweh, the
Mm.
God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So if you can
Mm.
enter into that covenant and that lineage, that means that this is something that's open for all. And, this is expanded on in the later prophets as well, of the house of prayer for all the peoples, people streaming to Israel to learn uh, from these scriptures and these laws. So that's a wonderful vision for the future. And instead, what we have is infighting, hatred, murder, all the Ten Commandments being broken on a daily basis as we fight over nonsensical distinctions of abstract ideologies, when we should really just learn how to live like human beings and stop being evil.
Yeah. Yeah. McCain said, Yahwistic faith is my new favorite term for my religion. It is. Scholars actually call Yahwism as the classical name, but they also apply it to like the Canaanite faith, which is really dumb. Because Yahweh wasn't even like a Canaanite god until the Jews came, and then they started like associating with Asherah and like all that
Mhm.
nonsense. Before that, it was just El,
Also, yeah,
Baal.
also Yahweh was around from the beginning. So the fact that people had the wrong version of Yahweh doesn't
Right.
mean that, like, the whole claim of the Torah is, you know all these gods, this is the true
Mm,
God. You know all these
mm,
stories, this is the real story. So it's not a denial of everything else that existed. It's actually just confirmation that this is the truth. And that if Yahweh himself were to come and speak to the most trustworthy prophet in all of history to tell him exactly how this works, that's what it would look like. So yeah, the fact that
right.
some Baal preacher, claimed Yahweh as his God doesn't mean that now he knows what Yahweh wants. I mean, there's a lot of people nowadays who claim that Yahweh is their God and clearly misrepresent him on a daily basis. So,
Right.
it's very important that when you take the name of the Most High, you're doing it with in a reliable way. And I couldn't see anything more reliable than the Torah.
Right. And even the people who are not part of the covenant, like the ancient Chinese, for example, like a lot of the ancient centers all over the planet had high god mythology, monotheistic faith. So the oldest nations we see on every continent were at one point before they became polytheists, they were monotheists. Like ancient China, for example, had Shangdi. Shangdi sounds an awful lot like Yahweh, in many aspects, including some of the Chinese symbols. You still have a lot of like the sacrificial language of Leviticus. You have the flood language of the eight people being saved, and like you have a lot of the mythology of the Torah within the Chinese writing system and the Chinese language, left over like thousands of years later. You get that all over the planet whenever you start studying high deity myths. So obviously everyone knew every like after the Tower of Babel, everyone was separate, but they all knew Yahweh in some form or fashion. They was just perverted over time.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah,
Anyway.
absolutely. And again, I have something to read to you. It's the first sentence of the Nicene Creed. And I think this is something we can all unite around. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. I mean, that's something Jews, Christians, and Muslims could all agree upon. You
Right.
know, when it comes into the details of theology, obviously there are going to be distinctions. But if we can all agree who the Father is, and we can all agree what the Father says, then we can all start treating each other with respect and not deviating from that standard. And that's really the glue that keeps us together. Everyone acknowledged that, which is why they all had to put the Father first, and they had to put the law first. And really, it's the deviation from that that causes all the harm.
Right. Although Muslims would have conniption with using the word father, because in the Quran it says that father or Allah is not the father of anyone, so you can't call him father. So even
Mm.
like the idea of them being like a spiritual father, like how Jews and Christians refer to Yahweh, they have issue with that. So they
Okay,
would
I
they
mean,
would push back against that specifically. But like, yeah,
I mean, look, the
yeah,
problem is there's contradictions there because Muhammad acknowledges Moses, and in the Torah of Moses, God is referred to as a father, not again, not
correct,
as like a physical
right.
father, but as
The
a
spiritual
father,
father of us all.
yeah,
Yeah,
a spiritual
but he
father.
also is the father of Adam in a way, because he literally like he created him. So
Right. Yeah, but
yeah,
not I guess not in a sexual,
biological, right,
biological way, but in a spiritual sense. Again, created in the image. In Genesis, it talks about Adam begetting his children in his likeness and
right,
his image. So the process of bearing progeny and having children is making someone in your likeness and image. So yes, in that sense, we are children of God. It states that in Deuteronomy 14:1. I believe you are the children of Yahweh your God. In the Song of Moses, he says he is your father, your master. And that's important.
yeah.
And so someone
We
says
do
Hashem is not a man, no form. That's
right,
important. Yeah, of course. No one claims that God's form can be narrowed down to any form. That would be breaking the second commandment. And God is not a man. I think just to steel man the Christian argument right now, I don't think Christians are claiming that God is a man. I think they're claiming that God manifested as a man for a period of time on earth, which is something that God did in the Torah as well. So that in
right.
and of itself, I mean, would you Christians are not claiming that God is a man? I think it seems like a straw man of the Christian
No,
belief.
the closest you get is the hypostatic union that we say that God took on a human nature within the Son. So it's not Yahweh himself, it would be Yahweh the Son, so one of the members, the persons of the Trinity, who then took on a human nature within him. But God, the God nature, is not human in any way, shape, or form. There is an aspect in which he incarnated as a human, but that doesn't mean that God is now human. It
Hmm.
is we have clear distinctions between the two. We have two natures within Christ, both
Yeah,
fully human and fully divine. So we
yeah,
don't mix them.
I don't think that it. I mean, anyone would say that God is a man unless they
Right,
were, a polytheist or an Egyptian or something.
right.
Um,
Or a pantheist, pagan.
Right. And so look, the bottom line is that I do see the harm of putting God in the form of a man and then having a statue of that man everywhere and saying that that man is God. I do think it definitely ventures into the territory of not worshiping graven images. Now I understand if Christians aren't like legitimately bowing down to that image and saying that that is God in His totality, then
Yeah,
it's not terrible. I mean, there's statues all over the world, of
and
various, like.
yeah. To
Go
be
ahead.
fair, I'm also an iconoclast. I do not, I don't agree with the icons in general. So even the icons of Jesus and Mary are like a general idea of God. I don't, not a fan of that myself.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm
yeah, you're
like,
not Catholic or anything, so.
right, yeah,
Yeah, well, that's
but
great. I mean, again, because the problem with icons is that they're a reductionist view of God, and God tells Moses, "You cannot see my face and live," which means that a true
right,
encounter with God would is actually impossible from the human point of view. So, God is definitely beyond our comprehension. So, even if He manifests in the form of a man or in the form of a burning bush or a cloud, that's not the totality of God because we couldn't possibly encounter that.
uh, like in one of my Catholic viewers, he's just sent a bunch of frowny faces.
Oh,
I
sorry.
love him.
Well, yeah.
So
Again, like,
it's fun.
you know, there are
I
people
get
that
that.
can. I believe there are God fearing people that are Orthodox Jews. Like it would be reductionist for me to say that just because someone's part of an institution that I don't like, that they're by definition a bad person. However, I am someone that dislikes institutions in general, especially man-made ones. Of course, they would claim their institutions are God-made, so that's part of the difficult the difficulty in the argument. I think the Catholic
Mm,
Church is similar to the Rabbinic Judaism in the sense that they claim that their authority is divine, and because of that, we're now still under the rule of some godlike authority. When, from my perspective, we're entirely outside of the realm of God telling us what to do. As the closest we have to that is the law, where God says, "This is what I tell you to do. These are the eternal decrees. Do not add or subtract to them." That's reliably traced to God. When God gives power to judges or priests, first of all, there are no priests. Second of all, there is no Torah justice system. So, what justice system? Your local rabbi or priest is not actually playing the role of a biblical Torah uh, judge or priest. And even then, within Torah frameworks, there is a possibility for corruption. So we're constantly warned against judges not taking bribes or not following the majority. This is a verse I've been thinking about, and I think about often, is Exodus 23:2. It says, "Do not follow the majority for evil, do not follow the majority to pervert the law." You understand? That means the
mm,
majority does not rule. Okay, God rules, the truth rules. And even in Deuteronomy 17, which is the source of the rabbis, where they say, "Oh, this is why you have to listen to the rabbis, because it says you have to listen to the judges and do not deviate to the right or the left." The caveat is, a man who goes against them with malice, uh, maliciously, that is a man who needs to be put to death. But the key word there is malice. If you're going against
right.
a corrupt court with righteousness, and you have the truth behind you, are you someone who's malicious, or are you someone who's righteous? Because by definition, at some in history, many times over, the movement, the revolution, is going against the corrupt authority. Now, if authority wasn't so corrupt, we wouldn't have to go against it. Okay, so that's something for people in positions of power. If they ever want to secure their power, take God's advice that He gives to the king. In Deuteronomy, He says, "You should read the Torah every day of your life and not be arrogant over your fellow. Then your kingship will last." So, if you want your kingship to last for generations, don't be an evil, corrupt psychopath, and then maybe you'll be able to maintain some of that power because God will trust you. Instead, what do
Right.
we have? I mean, look at what just came out, the Epstein files, right? The
Right.
richest, most powerful people are the most disturbed, corrupted, disgusting, evil people. So what are we doing here, right? Like,
Right.
people are like, "Oh, let's pursue money. Money is probably a good thing to pursue." Well, clearly, some of the most evil people in the world have the most money. So money obviously doesn't dictate value. When you have a Torah framework, you understand that there are things above materialism, there are things above social status, there are things above man-made accolades and certifications that mean a lot more than the nonsense that this world pursues. I mean, it's ultimately a world of falseness. I think Jesus says, in the world of truth, and the rabbis say the same thing. It's this idea that in the world of truth, everyone who's above will be below, and everyone who's below will be above. This idea that the world of truth is backwards from this world. Everyone in this world, the people that receive respect, really would be on top. Would be on the
Mm,
bottom in the true world. People that are downtrodden and ignored in this world would be on top in the true world. So that's something to keep in mind. Is just because you're not receiving the social status of someone who's rich and successful, that doesn't mean that you're not a success. God
mm,
measures success very differently than people do. Or even with
right.
David, right? God, you see with the eyes, God sees to the heart, right? So no one thought that David would be the king because he's some little shepherd guy, right? And they didn't even bring, when Samuel the prophet came to anoint the king, they didn't even bring him out
Man.
because
Yeah.
there's no way this guy, maybe his
That's
oldest
such an
brother,
insult. It's
yeah.
crazy.
And
Yeah.
then he's like, "Are there any more sons?" But it's the same thing with Joseph, right? Joseph's like, his brothers, "Who do you think you are? Like, go die." They want to kill him. They want to sell him
Mm,
away. So being rejected doesn't make you bad. Again, in fact, being in the minority, being rejected, feeling lonely, those things are actually very holy things in the Torah. I think one of the Psalms says, "God is close to the brokenhearted."
yep. Yeah. Even with Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, like that's just quoting Old Testament. Like it's just over and over and over again. He's just quoting the Old Testament of the smallest of people or the people God cares about. He cares about everyone, but he sees the people that are lost to society. And the point you brought up about if the government people like because the Quran or not Quran, the Torah actually is like, hey, uh, obey your masters because God ultimately is in charge of everything. And yet we have really wicked, evil people. What do you do with that? Well, Exodus commands you to, so maybe we should, listen to it. But the first leader God appoints after Moses is Joshua. And his first commandment to him is Joshua 1:8, where it's keep the word of the law on your lips always. always be proclaiming, always be reciting, always be like thinking about, meditating, chewing the cud of the law. And whenever you do that, you will be a faithful commander to me. So the leaders we have are terrible and wicked because humans are terrible and wicked. And whenever you abandon God's morality, what do you expect other than terrible and wickedness to come out of it?
Yeah.
We can't expect anything better than that.
It occurs to me that people always question, why did God make people wicked? But now I'm thinking an interesting thought, which is that because we're so wicked, we by definition have to turn to God. So it's almost like this idea that God is forcing us to turn to Him in all these areas of our life, right? Where we go
Right.
through struggle. Who do you turn to when you're going through struggle? God. Who do you
God.
turn to when you're confronted with your own evil? You turn to God,
God.
right? And
Yeah.
God is constantly calling us back to Him to recognize that it's not enough for you to just get lost in this little playground of earth. You have to always look above you and recognize that you're nothing without God. You don't exist without God. You don't understand a moment of this life cannot go by without you being connected to God. So I think that that's a very important thing, and God makes it clear that He's constantly calling us back to Him. That's
Right.
the whole romance of Song of Songs of Solomon. This idea of like
Yeah.
pursuing the your beloved. There's definitely like a love story here as well, and not every part of it is pretty, but through that ugliness and that struggle, you can actually achieve the beauty that needs to be achieved. But again, the more that people run away from God, the worse things become. I mean, Jonah is like the guy who has to run away from God,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
as first he tries to run away from God, and then when God sends the storm after him, he goes to sleep, which is just top tier, like avoidance. And the only thing that has to happen at that point is he gets thrown into the belly of the whale, into the depths of the beast, and then he can finally see the truth. So, do you want to get thrown into the belly of the beast and the bottom of the depths? Remember, Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh because they weren't Jewish. That's actually the story, right? He says,
Because
well,
they
they're
were
not.
the people that like they were the Assyrians, like they were the people that was genociding the Israelites.
Right,
So like
right,
they were going to his enemies, even like
yeah.
yeah.
And God says, these are my creations. They don't know the
Mm-hmm.
truth. You need to help them.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute he told them they were doing something wrong, it was like they were waiting for someone to tell them. And there's
Right.
something like that too. Like sometimes people just need a little nudge in the right direction. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it works. So God cares about everyone. God cares about the Assyrians. God cares about all human beings. He says these are my creations, and he gives them that whole lesson with the tree, the kikayon tree, and he plants it for him in a day and then destroys it. And Noah's like, sorry, Jonah's all upset. He's like, you got rid of my tree, and God's like, you're a tree. I made this tree, and you're already mourning it after one day. What about an entire city of people and animals who are all the works of my hands, and they don't know their right from their left. So there's a lot of cluelessness in the world. The fact of the matter is that God spreading the Torah throughout the entire world was a gift and a service to humanity, so that no one can get away with saying, "Oh, I didn't know." But yet we
Right.
still manage to suppress the truth and to deny reality staring us in the face.
So another thing is interesting from that. Almost everything you just said is a paraphrase of the Book of Romans from Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Almost like word for word. It was pretty impressive. It's almost like you were like writing it from scratch. I do have a super chat from McCain on Psalm 51:17, which is my sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, Lord. You will not uh, despise or hate, or however you want to translate that.
Amen.
Uh, Super based. One of my favorite sections of the entire Bible, Psalm 51.
Yeah.
Both
So
because you
tell me
just
that.
feel it when you read it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Tell me that thing from Romans.
Oh, all of it. So if you just go back like the last like 5 minutes, almost everything you said was directly from Paul, other than the Jonah tangent. Everything before that and after that was all like it sounded very similar to Romans, what Paul was writing in there, of how we know that we're evil, we have to go to God whenever we know we're evil. Whenever we're suffering, we go to God. Yet all men are broken in some way. All men are evil in some way. They know that they need God, but they're rejecting Him. Uh, and the love and forgiveness and all that. Like you went through the whole like 6 chapters of Romans in a couple of minutes of just like paraphrasing. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
thank God. Well, I mean, look, this stuff's intuitive. That's beautiful. And it just occurred to me in this conversation, but it's so touching because sometimes we ask why are we so evil, or why do we suffer so much,
Right.
but again, to get back to that romantic idea that actually it's God calling us back to him. And so what if we heed the call? What if
Right.
we do turn back, we realize, oh, like you're actually you're missing God. That's who you miss. That's who you need. And I mean, it makes sense.
It
If you were
does.
created in the image of God, getting back to the idea that God is as a parent, like if you're estranged from your parent, like that's so painful. And this is not just any parent. This is like your creator. I mean,
Right.
you need that connection, and
Yeah. The
it's
love
no
and the intimacy
coincidence.
there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He designed us for it. Like even like the grain offering, like he designed one of the five sacrifices of Leviticus. Excuse me, I think it's Leviticus 4, where it is literally a sacrifice in order to make a community, both with man, because you get to know your priests in the process, and with God, because you are having fellowship. So it's the fellowship offering. That offering creates fellowship between you and man and you and God.
Mhm.
So the whole community, the whole relationship, the whole purpose of Israel being a light to the nations comes through the sacrificial system in that way of like God is making you think about your evil because the humans had to sacrifice the animals themselves. So whenever they're killing the animal, the death that you deserve for your sin, you feel it in your hands. You feel like the death of the animal. And that, it's not meant to be pleasant. It's not meant to be benign. You're not supposed to be like insensitive to it. You're supposed to suffer when you kill the animal because you're causing the death of something. And it's
Mhm.
not for food. It's not for anything. It is to make you be aware of how bad your sin is before a just and holy God. And it also brings you back into right relationship with him and into closer and better relationship with the whole community. That everyone, there's accountability there, that there's love there, that there's mutual trust, that there is something that unites you together. And whenever you abandon Torah, we end up with extreme secularism. You end up with the world we see now, which is not very Judeo-Christian. It's not very biblical based, and it is a lot of debauchery, evil, and sin because we're so far removed from all of it. And one of the points you're making earlier, like whenever we go far from God and we lose that, we end up with both the secular systems we have now, but you also end up with the rabbinic systems that are trying to fill the void of the proper relationship you can have with God. And they come
Mhm.
up with all of these rules and all of these loopholes and all of these ways to keep Torah that's not actually keeping Torah.
Yeah, well said. Well said. First of all, I love how you explained the Levitical sacrifices with such understanding, because usually people see that as like a I don't know, a primitive thing. Oh,
Yeah,
how it's so
no,
primitive. It's like you literally
yeah,
kill an animal for food, but you wouldn't kill an animal for atonement.
right.
I mean, that's just stupid. I heard a guy say he's like, you talk about how absurd animal sacrifices is as you're flipping the burger on the barbecue, right? It's like, come on, like look at what you're doing. Like you're willing to do this for
Right.
pleasure, but not for atonement. It's a very bizarre argument from people. But what you said about rabbinic Judaism is 100% on point, and this is something that actually Christians have rightly accused Jews of, and Jews' only response is, "But like, your God is Jesus." And I get it. Like we can have that debate, but also, it's deflection when someone has an argument against you, and then
Mm,
you it's like the Jewish, you answer a question with a question, right? Like that
mm,
you
mm,
didn't respond to the argument, which is what about you and your observance is actually representative of the Torah. And again, I just want to do all Jewish people a service here and say it as clear and as uncompromising as possible. Rabbinic Judaism is not the Torah. It is a complete addition, a much later invention, 1500 plus years after the Torah was written. It has nothing to do with what the Torah says. It has nothing to do with what God says. It would be like if me and you read the Torah and then we came up with some of the worst possible absurd conclusions as to what the Torah says, and then call that the Word of God. It
yep.
makes no actual sense, um, and it really it weakens the soul when you spend your life defending things that are wrong because
Right.
you don't have integrity anymore. And unfortunately, orthodoxy lacks integrity because they constantly have to defend the indefensible. They constantly have to say things like, for example, what you were mentioning about, the Islamic thing with the young girls, 3 years old. The Talmud talks about that. The Midrash talks about that, right? So what is your excuse? Oh, you don't understand the culture. Rebecca was very
Mm-hmm.
mature at 3 years old. Why are you defending this? You
Yeah.
don't have to defend this. This is not the word of God. This is not the truth. These are man-made ideologies, man-made statements
Mm.
about the Torah that have not, like, I just want you to understand, there's a little math here, so I hope it doesn't bore people, although I'm no mathematician, so if I could handle this math, it's not that bad. Basically, they claim Rebecca was 3 years old, okay,
Ah,
when she
so
married
stupid.
Isaac. Now, why do they
Yeah.
claim that? Because
Seder Olam
they
Rabbah.
make something up, and they say that Sarah died at the binding of Isaac. Okay, that is made up. The sequence of events in the Torah, first of all, there's easily 10, 20 years between different stories in the Torah. But the sequence of events in the Torah is there was the binding of Isaac when Isaac was a youth, by the way, not an
Mm-hmm.
old man, not a 37
Mm-hmm.
year old man. When he was a youth,
Mm-hmm.
then Rebecca was born, then Sarah died. That could have happened over the span of 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they say that Sarah died at the binding of Isaac. Now, if Sarah gave birth to Isaac at 90 and she died at 127, that would make Isaac 37. Rebecca was
Mm-hmm.
then born after the binding of Isaac, and Isaac got married at 40. So that leaves us with 3 years from 37 to 40. Rebecca must have been 3 years old. Except their premise was false. Sarah didn't die
Yep.
at the binding of Isaac. Okay, she
Yep.
died after the binding of Isaac, after Rebecca was born. So let me give you a better timeline. Isaac was 15, and then Rebecca was born, and then Rebecca could have been 18 or whatever by the time Sarah died. So the point is that it's all
She
nonsense.
likely
It's all
was.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, not likely. She was most certainly a developed young woman, but
yeah,
not
yeah. But
40
she might have been
years
older
old.
than that. She might have been like
She
30.
could have been
Yeah.
in her 20s for all we
Yeah.
know. She was
Yeah.
a young, she seems to be a young woman, a virgin woman, a beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
Not,
She's an Ish. Or she's
she
an
Isha.
Isha. Like
Isha, yeah.
she's an Isha.
Well, she's an
She
Alma.
is
She's an
an
Alma.
Alma, she's a
Yeah.
Betula, and she's a Nura. She's
Yeah.
not a Yalda.
Yes, exactly, 100%. And again, their math is false. It's
Right.
faulty math, and that just shows you how dumb this is. That they come
It's
to the
so
most
dumb.
immoral conclusion possible. That Isaac, a 40-year-old man, married a 3-year-old woman, and they teach this to children, by the way. And
Right.
I've been censured in Orthodox environments for bringing that up as like, can we all agree that maybe Rebecca wasn't 3 years old? And the response is, how dare you? How dare you? It's like, I'm trying to help you guys out here. Like, how dare I? How,
Yeah.
how dare I suggest that Isaac wasn't a disgusting
Uh,
pedophile? I mean,
yeah.
what? Like, okay, so this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, how dare you contradict the rabbis who said immoral, disgusting things that were never written in the Torah, who come to conclusions that make no sense. Don't follow it. Just don't. Let it go. It's not helping your life. I read that 40% of Orthodox youth are going off the path of orthodoxy. 40%. Okay? So 40% is not a good rate. All right? Like,
No,
you're doing
that's pretty bad.
something wrong. Now remember, this is 40% of the existing Orthodox community. 80% of Jews are not Torah observant at all. 80%. So the reality is that the majority of Jews are completely unaffiliated with Judaism. The tiny minority of Jews are holding on to this rabbinic system that's fracturing every single minute because it's man-made and it's not made to endure. God's law is made to endure. God's law is eternal. Man's law is not. You're not going to be able to maintain a religion that tells you you have to wait 6 hours between chicken and milk because the Torah says do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. This is bullshit. It's just straight nonsense. So don't allow that. It turns the Torah into this inaccessible thing, which is honestly what the Christians were coming to respond to, is like, this is impossible, guys. This is impossible. When Christians say the law is impossible, I genuinely believe that it refers mostly to rabbinic law, which that
Right.
is not fulfillable. But when it comes to Torah law, yeah, no one's perfect. But come on, like, that's much more doable.
Right. So Judas Kai here says Rebecca was 14 when she met Isaac. Isaac was 37, according to the Kita. So this is from Seder Olam Rabbah. So the order of the world.
Can we just first
That
acknowledge that no one actually knows what happened before we talk about
correct.
what happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No one actually knows the timeline, and the actual words in the Hebrew indicates that one off Rebecca wasn't even born in the end of Genesis 22 in that list of names. That is an aside from Moses. It's not a report within spoken to Abraham. But we also have that phrase of "and sometime later." That phrase is also used of Joseph years into him being reigning in Egypt.
The
So we have
Torah
literal
has the Torah has
years
huge gaps
skipping.
in time
Right.
lapses.
Yeah.
Huge gaps. I mean, what do we
Yeah.
know about Isaac from 0 to 40? Just the binding of Isaac, right? So what do
Right.
we know about Abraham from 0 to 75? The rabbis have their whole thing. He was fighting with Nimrod. Nimrod threw him into the fire. They're like doing like a spin-off of Daniel
Yeah.
and his friends in the fire.
Uh,
Now suddenly Abraham's in the fire with
yeah.
he's breaking the idols and all these stories.
Oh, it's so
Okay,
silly.
that's not in the Torah. 75 years
Right.
old, we're introduced to Abraham. What happened to
Right.
Moses from the time he was a youth and went to Midian all the way
Yeah.
till he was 80? We don't know, right? So they use these time gaps to create and craft their own narratives. The reality is we don't know, not from the Torah.
I mean,
So what we
yeah,
can
from
tell,
Genesis 21 to 24 is a gap of 40 years. So in 3 chapters about the same family is 40 years of it time.
mm-hmm.
You have no idea between that whatsoever. It's just nonsense.
21 to 24.
Yeah, 21 to 24. 21 is the birth of Isaac. 24 is the marriage of Isaac at 40.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you have 40 years of time elapsing during that. Seder Olam Rabbah basically says that she was 14 or 3. So it gives both of those.
Mhm.
And then Rashi picked out the 3.
Mhm.
So because of Rashi and because of Seder Olam Rabbah, you end up with the 3 view.
Yes, and they teach this to children. I want to reiterate, they teach this to children.
It's crazy, but I think the dominant position, at least within the polarity of the rabbis, is still 14 as being the age because they use the legal term of Nara.
The dominant position, they still acknowledge the other opinion, right? As in, they say these and these are the words of the living God. Every rabbi, so for example, one rabbi says a non-Jew who studies Torah is deserving of death, and the other rabbi says a non-Jew who studies the Torah is like a high priest. Okay, well, which one is it? Well, they're all the word of the living God. Well, no, one of them is invalid. You understand? Invalid.
Right.
So they don't know how to say this rabbi is wrong. They don't know how to say those words because to them, all of these rabbis are speaking the words of the living God. So how could the living God be wrong? But if you actually read it for what it is, it's independent opinions of people who very often had very bad opinions. But yeah, again, as you said, there are 40-year time lapses within the Torah, 70-year time lapses, 100-year time lapses. But for some reason, from the binding of Isaac to the death of Sarah, even though
is zero.
Is zero years.
It's zero.
Even though the sequence of events is, and by the way, you know what they claim? They claim that Og, king of Bashan, who is only mentioned in the books of Numbers and Deuteronomy when Moses is conquering him and the Amorites, somehow Og, king of Bashan, pre-existed the flood and was one of the Nephilim, and he hung onto the ark and survived the flood. And he came and told Abraham that Lot got abducted, and then he came and told Sarah that Abraham was going to slaughter Isaac, and that's why Sarah died, because she was so afraid of hearing that her son was going to be killed. And what's so funny is I heard a rabbi be like, well, how could Sarah have such little faith? A woman like this, you know, she lived her whole life with Abraham and God, and now she dies just because she hears this. And I said, well, don't you realize, like, this whole story is made up, so you could easily just say
it's nonsense.
This story is not true. And Sarah had all the faith in the world, right? Point is, though, in the sequence of events in the Torah, there's the binding of Isaac when Isaac is a youth, then Rebekah is born, then Sarah dies. That could even be over a span of 30 years. So, just for people out there who, again, like, the anti-Semitism comes from the Torah. Okay, it comes from the Talmud. Right? You look at the Torah. What do you like? This is your own Bible. What are you going to hate the Jews for what's written in your own Bible? The anti-Semitism comes from the Talmud. So why are Jews holding on to the Talmud? What has it done for you, other than restrict your life, make you look like a fool, disconnect you from God, and put you under the authority of a rabbi instead of God? Right. Why would people maintain this?
So Seben Joseph said, why is it important how old people were? It's only important if she was 3, because that would make Isaac a pedophile. So we don't believe Isaac was a pedophile. So therefore, Rebecca wasn't 3. But also, she's not 3 according to the text. She is an Ish, an Alma, a Betula, and a Nura. All terms used for post-puberty within the Torah. Now, the Nura is a legal, it's halakha, to be 12 and a half to 13.
Yeah,
in
that's
the
not in the
Talmud.
Torah. Yeah.
That's not in the Torah. In the Torah, you get girls like Dinah, who is a Yalda, who is obviously pubescent and is able to have intercourse because she did. Now it was forced, but she didn't. It doesn't like mention injury. It just mentions that mental and emotional and all that stuff. But
She
like,
was a
if
Nara.
she was also called a Yalda,
Really?
yes.
You sure?
That's I made a 40-minute video on Rebecca being 3, and that's part of my evidence for Rebecca not being a child, because even a preteen or a teenager is called a Yalda in the Torah.
Do you
So the
know which
fact
verse
that
that is?
uh like
I'll find it. I'll find it.
36 or so. Um
30. It's
I'll
chapter
search it.
34. It's chapter 34. Oh, but here
34.
it's. I see you're calling her a Nara. Oh, okay, take this girl for me.
Yes, the Yalda.
Yeah,
So
but I mean, but that's Shechem talking about her.
it's
Whereas
true.
when the Torah talks about her, it calls her a Nara, which, again, yeah, the point is that none of these things are defining age. They're just
Right.
ways of referring to people. But beyond
Right.
the age, yeah, clearly she's even older than Dina was. And
Right.
beyond that, she's communicating as a fully grown woman. And
Right.
so their whole proof is
Dinah
based
wasn't.
off of a false calculation. That's my only point.
Correct.
Is
Yeah.
that people are allowing themselves to believe. And again, when you read Rashi, like they tell you in yeshiva, I'll just reiterate: if you do not read Rashi, you have not read the Torah. Okay,
Which is so dumb.
The same Rashi that says that Rebecca was 3 years old, which has mainstreamed this idea into the consciousness of Jews, including young children. So
Yeah.
this is where the perversion comes from. The perversion, right? It's like Moses told the children of Israel in the Song of Moses, the corruption is not with God. The corruption is with you, right? You are a twisted,
Correct.
crooked generation. You are the problem. You and all your made up religions and all your made up ideologies, you don't need this. All you have to
Hmm.
do is just go back to God, and instead you need to create all of this. Like, well, yeah, of course it's going to cause you problems.
Right. So Crusader for Christ said Muslims would love Talmud. I don't know if you know about it, but I kind of have this series in this book I'm writing called The Talmudic Dilemma, which is all about how the Quran is just a paraphrase of the Talmud, because most of Islam's theology comes from the Talmud. So, fun little thing. If you debunk the Talmud, you're also kind of debunking Islam. So you get like a twofer going for you. Speaking of which, because that's kind of the topic of the stream, is what's your go-to examples to show that the Talmud is fundamental at conflict with the Torah? Because I hear all the time from rabbinics that there's not a single halakha of the Talmud or midrash, even though they sometimes they extend to midrash, that contradicts or has error with the Torah.
Yeah,
I get that every single time I talk about it.
sure. Um, okay. I mean, first of all, a interpretation of the Torah is not the Torah itself. So if
Right.
I create an interpretation of the Torah that is entirely debatable, and then I enforce that upon everyone as law, that in and of itself is a dishonest thing to do. So again, the example I gave, pretty easy one: do not cook a kid in its mother's milk, suddenly comes to mean do not cook any animals in any milk
With milk.
ever,
Right.
including animals that don't produce milk. And then
Like
you
fish.
have to wait, yeah, like fish or chicken or birds, and then you have to wait 6 hours between those things if you eat it. But you only have to wait 6 hours between meat and milk, but not between milk and meat. Make it make sense. So again, like that's not the Torah's law. So already
Right.
you've created an entire law that is not the Torah's law. So that would
Mm.
be one place to start. But I mean, there is an abundance of examples where they make absurd claims. Like, for example, the rabbis say that if you were to carry your handkerchief in your pocket on Shabbat and left your front door into the street, that's work because
Right.
you
Oh
have
man, the work
transferred.
laws.
Yeah, so you have
Oh.
transferred something from one domain to the other, and that constitutes
Hmm.
as an action that breaks Shabbat because previously, forget about transferring yourself, but you transferred the key in your pocket from your personal domain into the public domain, and that is now work on
Mm.
Shabbat. Now, again, no one in their right mind would come up with such a thing, but because the
Right.
rabbis came up with it, now we have to backtrack and create a loophole around the made-up law, which is
The
that if you
Erev.
put, yeah, the eruv, if you put a line of fishing line around the neighborhood, now suddenly it becomes one neighborhood, and
One
now
domain.
one
Yeah.
domain, and now you can push your baby in the stroller to the neighbor's house. as
Yep.
if you as if that was work. But no, it's the fishing line around the fishing line around the neighborhood. Now remember, all of these things are investments. This stuff costs
Yeah.
money. It costs time. You have to go with the city. The biggest neighborhoods in the United States, like New York, Los Angeles,
They all
have
have them.
gigantic fishing lines around the entire neighborhood, covering
Mm-hmm.
hundreds of square miles because of this bullshit. Okay,
Yeah.
so like, spare me the claims that this is not getting in the way of you being a good person in front of God and following His law, when literally all of the investments, whether it's the education system, which costs an arm and a leg, whether it's all the kosher laws, where they claim that you can't eat any food unless it has a rabbinic certification on it, all the holidays in the Torah, all the festivals are one day, and the rabbis say each one is 2 days because they're trying to uphold a false doubt from 2,000 years ago that's already been settled. But because the rabbis made a false decree back then, they continue maintaining that decree even though it's no longer relevant. When it comes to Nida, a woman on her period, the Torah says you're only separated from her for 7 days. They say that you're separated for 7 days after she stops bleeding, which is almost 2 weeks out of every month. They also say that
Yep.
during those 2 weeks you can't touch her or pass anything to her hand. You have to sleep in separate beds and can have zero contact with her. Even the Torah just says you cannot uncover her nakedness and have sex with her. They also
Yep.
claim you have to go to the mikvah, um, which is nowhere in the entire Torah. Find me one place in the five books of Moses that says thou shalt immerse in a mikvah. It's not there. They also say that in order to convert, you have to go through an entire rabbinic conversion process and get certified by the rabbis and go through 3 years of training. You cannot even keep Shabbat until you're converted through the rabbi's conversion. That's completely against the Torah. The Torah never says that non-Jews are not allowed to keep Shabbat. The Talmud says non-Jews who keep Shabbat are deserving of death. So, in fact, unless you went through a rabbinic conversion process and uh, went through a mikvah dipping, which is also not in the Torah, which seems like a baptism knockoff, then that's the only way that you can keep Shabbat. There's actually like one of these stories, just so you can see how deep the rabbit hole goes, because it relates to the Shabbat and the conversion thing. So there's a story of this guy who is converting to become a Hasidic Jew, and he he was trying to keep Shabbat, and they're like, man, like you can't keep Shabbat because you're a goy, right? And so
Right.
he's like, no, like I'm breaking Shabbat. And they're like, well, you're not breaking Shabbat. You're with us in the synagogue. You're eating all the 17 meals of the Rebbe's on. By the way, another thing they tell you have to eat 3 meals on Shabbat. And you don't have to do that. So you're eating the 3 meals. You're coming to shul, the synagogue. How are you breaking Shabbat, goy? And he said, well, I have my handkerchief in my pocket, right? And they said, but there's an eruv. And he said, yeah, but I don't hold of that eruv. I don't think the eruv's good enough. So that's why it's breaking Shabbat for me. So yeah, look, I mean, if people are actually willing to go down that ridiculous, retarded rabbit hole with these people, there's clearly something missing from your life. Like, get a hobby. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I mean, I hate to be crude, but like, fuck your wife. Like, I don't know, do something useful.
Oh,
This is moves you away from God. It moves you away from
right.
sanity. It moves you away from truth. Because again, what is the Torah even about? It's about returning to God, heart and soul, not in all of these mindless little actions and all of these, obsessive thought processes. And again, like, I just scratched the surface there. Like, you have to
Right.
understand, at the end of the day, creating law books that are binding law outside of the Torah is already changing the Torah. And there's not just one book like that. There's thousands of books like that, whether they're
Right.
coming from the mythological standpoint, from the Kabbalistic standpoint, whether they're coming from anywhere. They're always deviating from the Torah. Yeah, there you go. It's
So this is
huge.
the largest Ivriv in the entire world. It has 3 million people who live in it.
Yeah.
Um, it's almost the entirety of LA. Uh, so it is insane. It's 100 square miles of land within this wire. And if you're
Hmm.
in here, this is all considered one house, according to the rabbinics. So all of this is a single house
Because of a fishing line. Remember,
because
I,
of the
I
fishing
I see.
line.
I live in LA. I drive. I see the fishing line everywhere. It's everywhere because the
Yeah,
reality is this is what they believe needs to be done. And
right,
again, like, this is so unserious. Anyone can see this. Like to take the mikvah thing for example. So first of all, they claim that the mikvah constitutes living water, even though
right,
it's really just stagnant rainwater in a pit, which is not living water. By that definition, all water is living water because it was once living water, right? But
right.
not only that, they have a loophole because they say you need to immerse in rainwater, right? The problem is they don't have enough rainwater. Let's say it's not off season of rain. What they do is they create a pit of rainwater on the other side of the wall, and they create a pipe between the rainwater and the regular water, and they open the pipe for a split second, and it's what the Talmud calls the kiss of the water, hashaka, the kiss of the water. And if the water is kissed for a split second, then all of the regular water magically turns into rainwater, and so now it's kosher for immersing, married women in the mikvah, so they can be with their husbands and they won't be impure. Yeah.
Right.
So again, like,
Do they do the water purification for the mikvah?
what do you mean by
So
water
from like
purification?
from Numbers, and so like Numbers 19, where it is the ashes of the red heifer. So like the waters of purification for defilements in the Torah is you get the ashes of the red heifer, the scarlet yarn, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and you put it all together in that. And then you sprinkle that over something, either sprinkle
Yeah.
it or you do running water,
They
because
don't
that's
do the
how
you
you actually
can't do
cleanse things.
yeah,
But
you can't do the red
yeah.
heifer because there's no priest. Now, of course, by the way, the funny thing about the
Okay.
red heifer, the funny thing about the red heifer is they say um, there's no such thing as a red heifer because by rabbinic standards, a red heifer cannot have one single white hair in its entire body. So even if it's a red cow, if they find one single red hair on the cow, it's no longer a red cow. So there's people actually like biologically engineering cows to
Right.
be
The red
fully red
cows.
because of
Right.
this stupid rabbinic standard that says you cannot have a single white hair, even though a red cow, there's like
Yeah.
10,000 red cows, right?
I've seen them
But
in Israel. They're pretty funny.
yeah, but again, like
Yeah.
biologically engineering things, because again, rabbinic law is impossible. Getting back to that point. The same thing with
Right.
the 2 day holiday, right? Even in Israel, they do Rosh Hashanah, which by the way is not Rosh Hashanah. They call it the Jewish New Year. It's actually really the day of remembrance with the shofar blast or the blast. So it's not actually um, uh, the New Year. But because they call it the New Year, they they do 2 days in Israel
Hmm.
even. So in Israel they do 1 day, but in Israel they even do 2 days for Rosh Hashanah because they say that even in the times of the temple, they would need the temple court to proclaim it the new month, and because the holiday's on the first day of the month, there wouldn't be enough time to notify all of Israel, which means that it's actually impossible, according to them, to fulfill God's law. Because even in a perfect world where we live with the Sanhedrin, which by the way is not a Torah term, um,
Right.
they say you would need to get your knowledge from the high court, and it's impossible to spread that word to the entire land. So again,
Right.
how then do you ever observe God's holidays correctly? The bottom line is that they don't allow individuals to use their eyes. They don't allow
Mm.
individuals to use their brain. They say that you cannot proclaim the new month until the high court in the temple proclaims the new month. You have to go to the high court in the temple for everything. How to wash your hands, how to tie your shoes, how to do this. Everything's the high court in the temple. And if you question the high court in the temple, which is another code word for the rabbis, then you're an apostate who's deserving of death. Right? But again,
Right.
like there is no high court, there is no temple. All this stuff is completely outdated, and we don't even have actual records of what was going on outside of the Pharisees' doctored records of a time where they weren't even in power. The Sadducees were in power, and they're writing 200 years after the time of the temple even existing, and they're revisioning history to favor them, and they don't even actually have any real evidence for what they're saying or doing. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, again, this is like extremely obvious for anyone who wants to see it, but there's so much indoctrination where they're just like, and anyone who disagrees with the rabbi is just uneducated. You're obviously uneducated. So like I have people tell me
Mm.
that like, you don't know what you're talking about. So, do you have any response to me other than you don't know what you're talking about? You better shut up. Well, how about you shut up or actually respond to what I'm saying? Because the reality is that this is very clear for anyone who uses their brain. You've clearly chosen not to use your brain, and that's why you're so offended. But it's not that hard to use your brain, actually. It's a functioning organ in your head. And,
Right.
God gives us the ability to have critical thinking. But when you have these authorities over you, they rob you from your ability to think critically because now the answers. I have one of my clients, he's a very wise guy, and he says this. He says, just because they love it because the rabbis give them an answer. And so now they say, because we have an answer, now it's the answer. No, just because I give you an answer doesn't mean that's the answer. Okay?
Right.
I just pull some answer out of my ass and now it's the truth. It's like, how about you
Yeah.
you question, think, be skeptical.
Yeah.
Like this is
Muslims do
actually,
the same thing, unfortunately.
yeah. They're like,
Yeah.
well, you don't know what to do in this situation, so the rabbis already told you, so you might as well follow them. It's like,
Yeah. The thing with the shofar blast, like, um, there's also the thing in the Talmud of you can't blow the shofar on the Sabbath because it's work. If you don't hold it the right way or if you don't carry it the right way, so that you can't have a
Yes.
novice blow it because that would be violating the Sabbath. So you have to have like some like, but then they're overly cautious around it. They put too much of a fence around the Torah, then they just break the law by trying to put a fence around it,
They don't do
and
it.
that
They
is
don't do it. They don't do it.
nonsense, right?
Yeah, they actually don't blow the. So again, if Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbat, they do not blow
Right.
it on Rosh Hashanah. They wait till the second day because lucky us, we have 2 days, and they wait for the second day to blow it, which is not
Right.
actually even the holiday. So
Which
yes,
is
they
just
they break
crazy.
they break Torah law because again, their concern is that someone will carry it to the shul. So
Right.
again, they're caught up in their own web of lies, and it's actually harming them in more ways than one. And the people that follow it, I'm sorry to say, are victims of that. And so, if you don't want to be a victim of that, stop having Stockholm syndrome and loving your oppressors. Just, uh, get over it.
Yeah.
Could you take Rabbi Akiva in a fist fight? That's too easy.
Him and his crowns. Yeah. Oh man. The crowns always get me. That one
Yeah,
irks me.
of
The
course.
idea that the language that didn't even have it whenever it was given on Sinai is Proto-Sinaitic and not the modern scripts. Man, the idea of the
Yeah,
Tog is just it's
yeah,
frustrating.
yeah.
But
But they've
yeah,
never been revealed, by the way. The secret uh,
Book
expounding
of
on
Akiva.
the
Yeah.
secret book of the hidden meaning behind the crowns of the letters that didn't exist at the time of Moses, which by the way proves that Rabbi Akiva was greater than Moses according to the Talmud. So Rabbi Akiva is not greater than Moses. Spoiler alert.
Mm.
And people are abandoning the law of Moses, which is not the law of Moses, the law of God.
You couldn't find a moral to circumcise the son on the eighth day as commanded by the Torah because it was the Sabbath.
Actually, I do think the Jews are good with that one. They do circumcise on Shabbat. Maybe because you're a goy, he wouldn't do it. I don't know if you're a goy or not. I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
he's a Christian who observes Torah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they wouldn't break Shabbat for a goy. I mean, I'm surprised. I'm surprised they would even do it at all. That's it's really.
He was circumcised from that. I don't know if he wants that. Oh no, he shared it on my channel before,
Yeah,
but he was
that's
circumcised as an adult whenever he
wow.
started keeping Torah.
That's
So
awesome. I have a lot of
yeah,
respect for people that do that. I know some people that do that. One of my best friends is a convert, not through rabbinic Judaism, but he got circumcised at 22 years old, and then he just recently circumcised his son on the eighth day. So,
man,
God bless. It's a real one. I mean, it's one of
that's
those.
crazy.
Yeah, again, because something that's so powerful about the Torah, this eternal covenant with Abraham, this idea that you need skin in the game. Like as a man, you literally cut off the protection of your manhood and sacrifice it to God.
He
Like
gets
it just
skin in the
doesn't.
game.
Yeah, no, it doesn't get more dramatic than that. At the end of the day, and people are like, oh, you don't really need to do that. It's like, yeah, you don't need to. But what if you did? What if you were that kind of person who
uh,
said, I I believe in it. I believe in it that much.
he
Um,
said he was told he was Jewish at the time, so
yeah,
he looks like a Jew. I mean, if you were to look at him, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's a Jew. And he's like, no,
yeah,
so he has like the CC and like yeah, the hair, the beard. He looks very Jewish. He
yeah.
blends right in New York.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's
I
so
don't
there's
know,
so
man.
many. You brought up a bunch of like back to back to back to back of just obvious problems. Even like the practical way you live your life is worse under the Talmud than it is under the Torah. Of like how you cook your food. You have to have two sinks. You have to have two ovens. You have to have like the meat and then the dairy and everything's separate all the time, no matter what. And I think they even have like meat and dairy knives. So
Meat and
not only do you have
everything. They have two
everything,
entirely separate kitchens, and then for
right?
Passover, they have to get a whole new kitchen
All the
because
bread, yeah.
apparently their pot is leavened bread. Explain
Right.
that one to
It's
me.
been infected by it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then, but yet there's also the loophole of you can just sell all your stuff to a goy
yep,
for 2 weeks and then buy it back. And it stays in your
yep,
house the whole time, but you like put a little piece of tape over it that
yes.
says, I don't own this anymore. Even though it's in my house, they're never going to touch it. They're never going to use it. They sell it for the exact same money that they buy it for. But somehow, because it's not legally your property, even though it's in your home, it's
Yeah,
fine. But
Yeah,
it's like,
remember, I mean, this is all entirely rabbinic. I've been present at those sales. They are nothing short
right.
of a mock sale and a loophole around a problem that either,
Yeah.
listen, you there's two ways to interpret the verse about leavened bread. Either you have to literally get rid of any leavened products in your house, end of story, get rid of it all. Or you
Awesome.
can also read it in another way, which says, "Cease all leavening from your house, and it shall not be found in all of your borders." Which means you can technically just put it away and not use it, and
Hmm.
that might fulfill the commandment as well. However, it's
Right.
this middle line loophole, which is we'll sell it in a mock sale to a goy, and now it's fine. It's like,
Right.
no, this you're not helping yourself here.
Right.
So yeah, all this stuff is not helpful. Um, the reality is that, again, we're looking at things like you can't toilet paper on Shabbat. You can't
Yeah.
turn on a light switch on Shabbat. You can't. I mean, you can't do anything.
Right.
It's insane. And again, as you said, there is restriction enough within the Torah framework that coming for someone coming from non-Torah observance to Torah observance will experience enough difficulty just completely eliminating all work on the seventh day, because that in and of itself is an extremely difficult thing to do. To eliminate certain foods is extremely difficult. People have a lot of connection to the foods that they eat, and a lot of the foods that are prohibited are delicious foods to people. So, you know, all of it is within such
Mm.
a small echo chamber. And remember, by the way, more rabbinic laws that are nowhere in the Torah. You're not allowed to eat bread cooked by a non-Jew. You're not allowed to eat milk from a non-Jew. Oil, food that was cooked by a non-Jew, or any, like, basically anything. Like, you cannot, if a non-Jew poured your wine, you cannot drink it. If a non like oh, because
It's
every
kind of
time you
racist.
oh, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
Like
beyond. I mean,
the
every time
Torah
you
is anti-racism, and then the Talmud is like pro-racism
yes,
in a way. And it's like, do you not
yeah,
see the obvious problems of like not just the legal code, but like the heart condition that it puts you in? Of you are classifying everything in ways that God didn't classify it, and a lot of those classifications are basically discriminatory.
yeah,
Where the law says like, do not oppress foreigners because you yourselves were foreigners. You know what it's like. So God is appealing in the law to our shared sense of humanity of you have suffered, therefore do not inflict suffering on others. You have
absolutely,
been discriminated against, therefore do not discriminate. Love your neighbor as
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
And then they just do the opposite of that. And I
yeah,
don't get how they can see that that is a continuation or even compatible with it whenever there's obvious classism, or at least like even within the rabbis of like if you don't study or you don't study Torah, you're the lowest of the low, even as a Jew. So like
mhm,
there's the classism within the scholars, the rabbis, sages, versus the Jews that are just casual but follow Torah, versus the Jews that don't follow Torah, versus the goyim.
mhm,
And they don't see that as a problem, even though the Torah is extremely anti that. So much so that one of the sins that Moses' siblings, so Miriam and Aaron, were doing is they were discriminating against his Cushite wife, his Ethiopic black wife. So because he had a black woman as his wife after his first wife either passed away or he took on a second wife. I think his first wife passed away and he took on a second wife myself. But his second wife was a Cushite. They discriminated against her, and God cursed them with leprosy. So they were making fun of her dark skin, and God cursed them with light skin and death, which I think is like a beautiful irony. Like God, like you're gonna make fun of their skin, fine, boom, opposite. And it's like you got a death sentence for racism, and then you go into the Jew versus Gentile debate within the rabbinics, and it's like what Aaron and Miriam was doing because they were creating these arbitrary divisions of the people, and it's like God loves everyone. He tells us that he wishes everyone would repent and come to him in the Old Testament, in the prophets. So if he wants everyone to be in relationship with him, everyone to come to him, everyone to be obedient and submit themselves to him, that would include the goyim.
yeah. Of course. I mean, it's no coincidence that God starts off the Torah with the story of humanity and chooses Israel to be priests to whom? To whom? To
Humanity.
to humanity,
Yeah.
right? That's literally like you're a priest without a people to serve is not a priest. You're just a I don't know.
Right.
You serve the wall. The whole idea here is that you have a function as a nation of priests, and instead of actually doing that, they've just othered everyone, and they call, like as we spoke about last time, the guy who wrote down to who wrote in the chat saying, "Oh, the Torah says don't marry people from other nations," when it's
Right.
referring to the seven Canaanite nations that we were told to wipe out, right? Then
Yeah.
grouping together all of humanity with a nation that was so wicked that God said to wipe out is basically betraying what you really think about the nations, the Goyim, which means
Right.
nations, is that they are not worthy of actually living. As
Right.
opposed to the end of the Song of Moses, it says, "Sing out, O nations, with my people," right? And so it's like there's this unity that God wants between
For
His
everyone.
people
Yeah.
and all the nations, because fundamentally we're all created in the image of God and we're all His children.
Yeah.
And
We get the same thing in Isaiah and Jeremiah as well. That in the new earth, there will be the the Jews and also the other nations will be sprinkled and brought into the fold of God. That we're all going to be one community together.
yeah, well, just
Yeah.
another rabbinic example. So this goes into the mikvah conversation as well. They also believe you need to put your vessels in the mikvah as well. So even if you buy brand new vessels from the store, you need to immerse them in a mikvah, okay? And
To make it
this,
kosher.
to make it kosher. This is not a law in the Torah.
Yeah.
Where do they derive it from? They derive it from Numbers chapter 31, verses 21 through 24. This is a situation where the Israelites had just gone to war with the Midianites. Okay. By the way, the
Mm.
Midianites were one of those evil nations that God said to wipe out completely. One of these nations steeped in idolatry to the point that they were to be destroyed. So so Eleazar the priest told the army, this is the decree of the Torah that Yahweh commanded Moses: the silver and the gold and the copper and the iron and the lead should all everything that could be passed through the fire should be passed through the fire to be purified, and it additionally has to be purified with the waters of separation, which is the red heifer. Okay, so again, there
Mm.
is no red heifer nowadays, and anything that cannot come through fire, like say a wood vessel, should be passed through water. It doesn't say a mikvah, just water, right?
Right.
From this, somehow they gather that anytime if you go to Target and you buy a new pot, that pot came from Goyim. All Goyim are idolaters like the Midianites, so you have to take this brand new vessel and forget about passing it through the fire, because they don't even follow the law as it's written. They don't pass it through the fire. They don't put it in the ashes of the red heifer, because there is no ashes of the red heifer. They just
Right.
put it in the mikveh, the magic mikveh water, completely non-biblical commandment, to solve the problem of how much they hate non-Jews and think that all non-Jews are idolaters like the Midianites. And like
Right.
again, it's not even specified what the impurity is there that we're trying to. I mean, there's the impurity
Mm.
of death, which is why they need to the ashes of the red heifer, but the purification ritual of burning, of putting metallic vessels through fire and non-metallic vessels through water, is not
Hmm.
specified what it's even for. It was something unique to this situation, and it can't even be pinpointed what it is. It's speculated that it's due to idolatry, but again, your commercialized pot from the store is somehow being used for idol worship. Okay, in the same way that your commercialized wine that you buy is used for idol worship. Okay,
Yep.
that's not what's going on. Someone just crushed some grapes. Like, this wasn't a ritual to Baal. So
Right. Insane.
you know
So
it's mhm,
I have some people calling me out for using the word racism. I agree that I
yeah,
should not have used the word racism. I just meant discrimination, but my brain, because I'm tired, couldn't
yes,
think of the word discrimination. So
I
I
understood what
my
you
it
meant.
defaulted to racism, but I
Racism
don't
is
actually
just
mean racism.
yeah,
Right.
again, it's just the modern way of saying discrimination. So I understand what you
Right.
mean. It's not
Yeah.
racial. But it's
It
discriminatory in the
is
sense that yeah,
classist. Yeah.
yeah, or whatever. It's some sort of elitist mindset that says, I am better than you because I'm chosen, and now I'm going to create all of these boundaries around myself because I'm just so holy and pure, when God never even told me to do these things. And this is
Right.
really the problem. It's this self perception that's so inflated. When God is telling us to reach out to our fellow man, the rabbis are telling you to distance yourself from your fellow man. When God is telling us, wipe out these nations so this evil can be gone, and now there can be purity among humanity, and you can be an example of that purity, we actually, as Israel, get caught up with the abominations of the Canaanites. That's the real history in the Bible, which is that the Jews were sacrificing their children to Molech, and the Jews were worshiping all these idols. And this is actually what was happening in, there's on the topic of this like secret cabal of elites doing all these satanic rituals. Are you familiar with that chapter in Ezekiel? I don't know,
Hmm.
maybe Ezekiel chapter 8, where God tells him to crawl through a hole in the wall of the temple, and he crawls through this tunnel and comes to this secret cavern where there's all like the elites of society just worshiping like satanic demon gods with
Right.
like sketches on the wall. And then God takes him somewhere
Mm.
else, and he sees all these women making this god cry, and then he sees a bunch of people in the temple courtyard bowing down to the sun. And God is like, this is what they do in my house of prayer. This is what they do in my house of worship. So there is no
I thought
integrity.
the cry was like a euphemism for like orgasming for that passage.
Well,
Isn't it like the women are like prostituting themselves to it, and that's why it's like weeping, but not weeping from their eyes? Uh,
well, that's certainly a rabbinic interpretation, but I don't even know if they've if
oh.
they've been that, if they're that creative. I mean, look, anything's possible. I mean, these idols clearly are something that people don't really understand what was going on with this stuff. But it was clearly
Right.
very, very interactive. Let's just say, I mean, it was clearly actually a situation where people were attached to these idols to the point that they were willing to sacrifice their children for it, where they were willing to completely deny Yahweh, knowing that He was real, to their own destruction because of these gods. So these gods were not powerless. And again, as if there's not other powers in the modern day, as if there are not things that pull us in different directions away from Yahweh. Clearly, there are.
Right.
And this is something to worry about. It's something to be concerned about. It's something to actually um, understand that this is a serious situation, and it's always
Hmm.
been. And God
And
is calling to us in the here and now to do better.
yeah, and it's not just a Jewish problem or a Gentile problem, it's all nations. The vast majority of nations that used to be Jewish or Christian are now secular. And they go out and they do the very things that in the Bible people were killed for. They go out and do fornication. They go out and do essentially like the type of temple prostitution that people were being killed back in the day for. Like the guy with the Midianite that went into the woman and like there's a spear through both of them. That's a daily occurrence now in all of these nations, both in Israel and America and everywhere. We just do that now, and it's been like accepted. Like we have the pornography industry, which is essentially glorification and recording the types of acts that God killed entire nation groups for. But we've normalized it and allowed so much evil into our societies, and we call good evil and evil good, almost as if there's a God who wrote that down in a book somewhere and told everyone to not do that. But anyway,
One of
Ash
my
said the
favorites.
dynamic.
Oh, oh,
Was that cute? Yeah, Ash.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank God, because you can be dynamic when you actually have the Torah on your side. And one of my favorites is the Orthodox rabbi who's the CEO of Pornhub, who said he's there to work on the ethical proceedings in Pornhub, as if the ethical thing to do would not shut that down,
Shut it down.
right?
Yeah,
Right? No,
like
no, no. We have to
super
work on
evil. Yeah.
just making it more ethical, right? Like this stuff is from
No such
hell.
thing.
It's actually
Right.
from hell.
Yeah.
And God
Literally from
gives us,
Balaam trying to curse the people. That's his solution was, hey, if you make the Israelites sin through this sexual misconduct, God will kill them for you.
yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah, you may not be able to
literally it.
curse them cosmically, but if you
Right.
want to actually get to them, it's not that hard. Yeah,
Yeah. Just make them sin in this way and God will curse them for you.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, it's so destructive.
Ethical Moloch worship is wild. So we have a
Exactly.
question from Stephen. He says, Israel, is your simcha through an organization or do you simply use it as a title? If it
Yeah,
is, what organization?
no worries. Smicha. Smicha is another one of the rabbinic ideologies. It refers to the fact that Moses supported his hands on the head of Joshua when he passed
Mm,
on the baton to
hmm.
Joshua. Now, mind you, the priest also supports his hands on the head of the offerings in the temple. So it's a symbolic idea that you support your hands on the head of the person that is bearing the weight, whether it's the sacrifice or the person. The rabbis refer to smicha in the abstract as being ordained by a reliable tradition of rabbis, which of course they claim goes back to Moses. Because if I traced you to go back to Moses, if I trace anyone back to Moses, like history goes back. So first it was Chris, then it was his father,
Mm,
then it was his grandfather, then
mm,
it was his great grandfather, then it
mm,
was Moses, right? So you come from Moses too. Congratulations.
mm.
But the rabbis basically just say that because Moses came before them as the leadership of Israel, they therefore hold the authority of Moses. And you can only receive rabbinic authority if you get validated and certified through their institution. So to answer your question, I'm not certified by any institution. I find the institutions to be corrupted to its core. I've been in rabbinical school in the most orthodox environments of the rabbinical schools, and what they teach is Talmud, not Torah. What they teach is the rabbi's law, not God's law. So for me to have a certificate from the yeshiva would be like having a certificate of ethical Moloch worship. It's just not.
Right.
It's not actually a great claim of an accomplishment. Um, you know, I am actually a professional manipulator of God's word, right?
Right.
That's my certification. Okay, so yeah, I don't need that certification. I'm not certified by any of these institutions. Remember, in Christianity, there's 2,000 denominations. In Judaism, there's pretty much four.
Mm,
There's Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and Karaite.
right.
The Karaites are basically non-existent to the Jewish population. They're not even
Mm,
acknowledged at all, and they're off on the side, very very small number doing their own thing. Um, the Reform and Conservative are pretty morphed into one, with Reform being more dominant because they have a clearer stance, which is we don't believe in anything, so we'll just do whatever we want, and we'll call it Judaism because we eat matzah balls and bagels and lox, and
hey, that's all it takes, you know.
it's all it
You
takes.
can get your hood pass, you get your card for that.
Yeah, and
To be
so
fair,
mhm.
there's only like 15 denominations of Christianity, so the 2,000 is a overblown number because the way that they count denominations is per country, per line. So if you're the same denomination in a different country, you're all of a sudden two denominations. So
Okay,
the way that figure counted it was all the denominations per country and sometimes like per line. And if there was a single difference between them, they would count them as separate denominations. There's
interesting.
really only like 15 to 20.
Okay,
Um,
sounds
it's
like
really
the
not that.
rabbis. Sounds like the rabbis with the
Right.
613 commandments when it's really like
Right. Yeah, it's
100. Okay.
overblown and yeah, exaggeration. Yeah.
Okay,
There's
well
only
that's
like
cool. I
200 or
mean,
so.
that definitely lends credibility to Christianity more so than the 2,000 number makes it seem like
Yeah, it's
a
so stupid. Like it's
parody.
almost impossible to come to like 2,000. Like I saw one that was like 60,000 denominations within Christianity. I'm like, you are an
Yeah,
insane person. What are you on about?
yeah.
No.
Okay,
Uh,
that's funny.
yeah.
Yeah. So again, all I'm saying is that none of the institutions of Judaism actually represent Torah true
Right.
observance and practice. So it doesn't actually make sense for me to go through these channels if actually they're against the Torah itself.
See, people
Yes.
think that matzo balls and bagels make you Jewish, but makes you reform Jewish. You want to be firm? Coolant. the
Chulent.
the shulent, the
Yeah.
stew,
The
yeah, the
stew.
beef stew, the
Yeah, exactly.
meaty stew.
That's true.
Yeah,
From.
your Shabbat meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. He brought up one of my favorite stories of all time, which is the Moses teleporting to the future to study under Akiva
mhm.
with both the Tog and just like general study. And it's like, first off, Tog doesn't exist. There's no crowns on the letters. And second off, uh what?
Yeah.
You're
No.
telling me that the man who saw God uh was also the one who had to learn under Rabbi Akiva?
Yeah, and his statement was,
It's kind of
God,
nonsense.
God, if you have a man like Rabbi Akiva, why would you give the Torah through me?
Right. Yeah, it's like, oh man, my heart that irks me. Like the same thing they do with they do a lot of whitewashing of history, both because they have to justify their sages having authority that they don't have, and to actually I think that's like the main reason. So like the whole idea of like Shabbat 55a with all of the prophets and kings being whitewashed of, oh, if you think Abraham sinned when he did this, you're wrong. If you think David sinned with Bathsheba, you're wrong. And it goes through all of those things. The one with David specifically irks me because there's like seven there. But the David one is so wildly wicked that they would say that him killing Uriah was not an evil act, that Uriah was actually this like pagan worshiper and deserving of death, and the Sanhedrin had already issued his death warrant, and the only problem was David didn't kill him by strangulation. He should have killed him, so he killed him in an improper way. But killing him, totally fine.
Think about it like this, right? The whole message of the story of David and Bathsheba is that power corrupts. And
right.
You can see what a blind spot they have because they can't even comprehend that very simple fact that power corrupts. And so they have to whitewash a story like that because it whitewashes their own conscience. They don't actually have to consider the fact that maybe this power that I have right now is really corrupting me, because no, it's impossible. David would never sin. The rabbis would never sin. So we're all perfect. It betrays their understanding of morality as being so limited, to the point that they don't understand that man is evil from his youth, and that judges are subject to corruption, and taking bribery blinds the eyes of the righteous and distorts the words of the wise. So if you don't have that clarity and understanding, you'll just go on and repeat the bad thing again and again. It's like the Holocaust denial thing, right? Like, no way that happened. Well, then
that's so
it can happen again. That's the bottom line. It's like, if you deny the existence of evil and the extent that it could happen, then what is your protection against it? You don't even have awareness. You're like Adam and Eve. You don't even have awareness. So like, yeah, I guess they fell for it but like, you're at a point in history where you have all this behind you and you still haven't learned your lesson. That's kind of on you.
Yeah. So Jack Ray gifted 10 memberships. I appreciate it, Jack. You are a crazy person. There's one person, so he's donated well over 100. I think it's like 115 or 120 now, memberships. And there's one guy in my chat who's always here and always talking, and his name is Sebastian. And he popped up earlier and he said, "Hey, I'm here on time." He's one of my mods now. He has never gotten it. So it's kind of like a running joke now that no matter what happens, no matter how many memberships I get, Sebastian will never get one of the memberships. And it's really funny. So every time I see memberships donated, I immediately check to see if he gets it. Right. But Mary Arb said that if an account is a brand account, they cannot get gifted memberships. I don't think his is a brand account. Ash Mays has a branded account. He can't get memberships. I don't think I have one. I can get memberships. But also we have McCain, who donated and said, "Paying Jizzy in remembrance of Uriah."
That's funny.
Jizzy is the tax under Islamic law, for those who don't know.
I figured. Well, yeah, I guess he's just going to have to get it himself, huh?
Right. That's what I told him. Yeah, he's a young kid in Australia.
Got it. Well, look, I mean, thank God.
The young kid's like 17.
Yeah, I mean, thank God all this stuff is available, for free as well online. People can just see this stuff because, I mean, what are we doing with the internet? We're doing the most evil things, but if we can do some good, at the very least, we can get this message out. Like, we see active movement in this YouTube space, for example. People of our generation have been inspired by figures on YouTube, like people like Jordan Peterson, I'm sure inspired you, and stuff like that. Like, that's a product of this generation. We know about this space, and it even dictated the previous election. Was dictated by the YouTube space, pretty much.
It's true.
So like, there's a lot of power here, and a lot of the old institutions are being taken down because people are given the freedom to speak, at least for now, thank God. So let's keep it that way. But the freedom of speech is very important in order to kind of show that the old ways are dying, and not the old ways in terms of the good ways, the evil ways. Because people don't want to be taken advantage of. They don't want people with an unreasonable amount of influence and power to take advantage of them. And we have an opportunity now to actually spread the word and do some good. So I'm very glad. And 17-year-old is a good age. That's kind of the age I had an awakening. And Joseph's story starts at 17. So it's a good age.
Man, he got thrown into a pit for it. There's one thing I wanted to bring up with the David thing of, if you take the rabbinic position of David didn't sin, then you're undermining one of the most powerful statements of the whole Bible, which is Psalm 51. If David didn't sin, Psalm 51 has no meaning whatsoever, because Psalm 51 is a response a year later. So for a year, he had been dealing with the sin of murder and adultery. He had weighed on him. And he already had the Holy Spirit at this point. He was anointed of the Lord. He had such wickedness. Like, this is one of the most depraved acts you can do as a human, is both adultery and murder. And yet it weighed on him. It caused the death of his child. And for a year, he's in active mourning and remembrance and turmoil and guilt and all of this heaviness. And we see that, like, Psalm 51 is dripping with his emotion whenever you read it out. And it's such a powerful reminder of God's love and his forbearance and his patience with us and how evil sin truly is. But whenever you take the rabbinic view and he didn't sin at all, you're stripping the Bible of its teeth. You're taking out God's power in our salvation, God's power in our relationship to him, God's power in us being sinners who are in need of relationship with God. Now, I would say through a savior, but even if you say it's through repentance, you still need that relationship with God in order to facilitate it. Psalm 51 is the powerful reminder. I think one of the most powerful reminders in the entire Bible of that, other than like Sodom, Gomorrah, like being glassed by God. But like, that is still, you can kind of like other that. You can emotionally separate that and like, oh well, I'm done doing that. I'm not evil like that. You don't get the emotion behind the suffering that Sodom and Gomorrah was doing whenever that happened. But Psalm 51 is like, you feel David's pain in that moment whenever you read it. And to remove that is just, it's an insult to God.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. And remember, it's specifically people of that caliber of holiness and chosenness and
Right.
righteousness can still fall. That's the whole message, which is like, yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah, yeah, they're for the
Right.
streets anyway. We're talking about the anointed of God,
David.
right?
Yeah.
And by the way, like David's story arc is so powerful. The David and Goliath story is it's the story
So baller,
of
man.
overcoming the
So cool.
impossible, right? Like the little
Right.
guy can actually conquer the roaring monstrosity of the that's taking you
The
down.
Giants.
Everyone's afraid of the giant. Wow, right? And then like to see that happen, it's like you have to know that's where things can go. Like Solomon in all his glory, like where does that end up if you don't watch out? Like this stuff matters. And I noticed this in Orthodox Judaism. There is an inability to experience emotion on that level. There's
Mm.
some like I don't know if this is a little vague, but there's some emotional blockage that they have in that in that in that religious experience that's disconnected. It's disconnected from your humanity because you of the way they view humanity. So I remember like struggling with this idea like am I a Jew or am I a human? Because you genuinely don't know that your humanity comes first, and
Right.
because there's this disconnect from humanity, there's this disconnect from the opposite sex, and there's this disconnect from God, and there's this disconnect from truth and from reality because you're no longer living in reality. You're living in some virtual reality that was created by the rabbis where you see the world in a way that's untruthful and that's not actually correct. So you start to see things and you start to misunderstand the way life actually works, and that's not helpful. And so all of a sudden you're confused and you see a non-Jew and you don't know what to feel, or you see a woman and you don't know what to feel, or like just
Yeah.
something you can understand within Orthodox culture. You can never sing a love song.
Mm.
There's no such thing as like at a wedding they sing a love song. No, they sing Hashem, Hashem. Like they just sing to God all day. And there's nothing wrong with singing to God. It's wonderful. I mean, they learned that from David, obviously, in the Psalms. But again, there's just you can't express yourself in a real truthful manner because there's so many limitations on your expression. There's so many things you can't say
Barriers
and
to
you
it.
can't do. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's barriers with your own humanity. You can't relate to your fellow man. You can't actually experience the truth of this life because you are living in a fake reality that's fabricated to you by human beings. And this is not just true about orthodoxy. I mean, what do you think is going on with virtual reality, AI girlfriends, pornography? What is all of this, right? This is some elites some people who have way too much control, who are way too evil, who are trying to put you in an environment that is unhealthy for you, that is destructive to your very nature, that removes you from your humanity, that removes you from the opposite sex, that removes you from the truth of God, that removes you from your ability to interact with the world in a meaningful fashion, to understand your purpose, to understand the meaning of life, to build a family, to be successful. All of these things are being taken from people by these corrupt institutions and these corrupt organizations. And that is a theme throughout all of these things. And I realized this in Orthodox Judaism, and then I started to realize it in everything. And then I started to see this pattern because I realized, okay, let's say I leave Orthodox Judaism. What do I have? Well, I have psychotic secularists who are trying to run amok and destroy the world. I have Christians who, as you said, there's biblical illiteracy, and are they even following the foundations of their faith? And again, I don't mean to offend, but I'm just not very entranced or intoxicated by the idea of Jesus. Like there's a lot of things I like about it, but I just don't see it as representative of the Torah. That's just full disclosure here. But even then, like, Christianity obviously can be represented in so many different ways, and I think you would agree as well that the institutionalized version of Christianity is not representative of even the true virtues behind it. So like what it comes down to is, like, we're just looking at watered down versions of faith and connection to God that are actually really just disconnected people operating through some form of machine. I mean, that's the whole the theory of the Matrix, right? Like, everyone's just in a pod being used to power the machine, and the machine is just this gigantic monstrosity, and that's the Goliath, right? It's this gigantic monster who is making everyone afraid and doesn't allow anything to happen, and everything's at a standstill. And what does the gigantic monstrosity do? It defies God, and it mocks God. It says, who are you? What do you believe in? You have no power. I'm the power, right? And people fall for it all day. They want the certification from the rabbi. They want the college degree. They want the position. They want the job. They want the this. They want that. That's what defines their value. It's like, what do you identify your own self-worth with? Is your self-worth that you have $1 million in the bank, or is your self-worth that you're right with God, that you're right with your own heart, that the people in your life are actually the right people, and that you're experiencing the life that God has in store for you? So again, I think we have to distance ourselves away from the falsehoods of man and the evil of man, and return to the purity and the creation of God.
Right. I love the idea of, are you a Jew first or are you a human first? And I was thinking, you instantly reminded me of the Passover, where there were Egyptians that participated and ate the Passover lamb covered by the blood of the lamb in that moment. So the first, like, thinking like what's the most Jewish event in history? I would say it's probably the Passover. If it's not the most, it's like top 10. But in that moment, we have Gentiles participating in it, worshiping Yahweh. Why is it that it is, you're developing this system that forces you into this category of, I'm a Jew first and then a human second? And that seems very anti-Torah. Like, I don't know. That's always bothered me. And I feel like people just forget how communal and how relational God is in the Bible, where we are just trying to make it strictly. Like, I feel like there's an overemphasis on the law and an underemphasis on God's own desires for us. Like, the first book of the Torah is not law at all, other than the Adamic covenant and then the covenant with Abraham. But after that, you don't really have, like, okay, the Noah covenant, sure, but like, you don't really have any of the other covenants outside of that. And it's even then, it's not really legal. You get circumcision, but that's it. You don't really get any of the other ones. And there's lots of things that happen in Genesis that would break the Torah laws, but since they're not given yet, God doesn't count it as sin. So like, Jacob married a woman and her sister. That's strictly prohibited in Leviticus. Yet it wasn't sin for him.
Married his half-sister.
Right. So two forms of incest, well, a form of incest and a form of forbidden relationship, happen within the patriarchs. The only patriarch that didn't sin sexually according to the Torah law was Isaac, unless you think she was 3. Anyway, which obviously she wasn't. But they sinned in different ways. They didn't sin sexually by breaking the Torah laws. So we have God, his primary focus in the Torah. The first thing he gave was God's relationship to creation and then God's relationship to man.
Yeah,
That's the foundation.
of
And then the
course.
law is on top of that to control how we interact with God and with each other.
Yeah, but
And the main
the
purpose
law
of it was
is,
humane.
yeah, it's supposed to help you. It's not supposed to harm
Right.
you,
It's
right?
not
So like,
supposed to control you. It's supposed
yeah,
to help you live morally in this fallen world.
yeah, of course. And
That's why
again,
Adam didn't have him.
yeah, and the whole goal of the Torah, as discussed in Deuteronomy, is circumcision of the heart, returning to God, heart and soul. This is actually the um, the finishing line of the Torah. Is like, where are we headed? Where does this go? This goes to a point of return to God, heart and soul. This goes to a point of circumcision of the heart. It doesn't discuss a sacrifice. It doesn't discuss the laws even. I mean, it discusses following the commandments as the way to show God that you're actually on track with Him. But it's also internal. So the laws keep
Mm,
you within. It's like you mentioned Adam, right? But like you can view the laws as kind of the boundaries of the garden. Like you leave those laws, you're out, in no man's land. You're in
right.
the outlands. Like you're no longer in the barriers that God has set up for you. So those
Mm,
laws are very important to keep you in line, and everyone would acknowledge that. But redemption is personal. Redemption is godly. Redemption is internal, largely, and only through the internal return to God do you receive the external blessings of rains in the proper time, long life, no barrenness, and all the blessings that God promises to alleviate the curses. So yeah, I mean the situation we find ourselves in now is one where we are occupied by that
yeah.
curse, and I like how that spoke to you because. The human or the Jew or I mean there's so many things that people put before their humanity, but your humanity is right directly to God. It's linked directly to God. You don't exist without God. So by coming into contact with your humanity, you come into contact with your fellow man, and then you come into contact with your Creator. And it's a deeply moving experience that is unfortunately people have so many blockages up. And I mean that's what circumcision is. Circumcision is removing the blockage that's on the heart. Right? God says you have all
Mm,
this excess that you're covering yourself up from God. You're putting up these barriers. You have to cut it away, right? It says in
hmm.
Deuteronomy 10 you have to cut it away, and then in Deuteronomy 30 it says God will cut it, will circumcise it. So it's like
Hmm.
you got to do it. God has to do it. It's a combined effort. Let's just say that you do your part, and then God will do His part.
You just again quoted from Romans, by the way. Anyway, uh,
Which
it's just
part?
funny how that keeps happening. Romans 3. So the circumcision of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to come to God, we need to be not circumcised of flesh. That's not the primary characteristic, because even Gentiles who keep the law, they are showing that them following the law through their obedience to God, even though they're not circumcised, is better than a Jew who is circumcised, who's not following the law whatsoever, not having a relationship with God. So circumcision of heart is the primary importance, where God cuts away the extra nonsense, the sin nature, or desire for this world, and or lack of desire for Him. He removes it and then like writes the law in our hearts. He helps us with both loving man and loving God and each other and all that stuff. So it's a little interesting
Yeah,
there.
cool. On circumcision of the flesh, though, when you quoted about the Passover offering, there is a caveat that you have to be circumcised as a male.
Correct, for the
Yeah,
Egyptians. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's
Uh,
interesting.
God created us to be relational beings. We have relationship with God and each other. And isolation absolutely breaks down. Uh,
Yeah.
absolutely breaks it down.
What did they try
Um,
doing to everyone in COVID? Isolating people, weaponizing death, fear, and
Terrible.
illness and the
Yep.
unknown against people. Cover your
Hmm.
face, hide your identity, distance yourself from other people, live in fear and avoidance over nothing, by the way, over a little cold that was nothing. Definitely not something
Right.
to lock people up. And then maybe if you weren't creating manufactured illnesses in laboratories, then maybe they wouldn't get out, and then maybe you wouldn't have this problem to begin with. So it's like all of the
It's
man-made
true.
solution to the man-made problem. It's like the
That
arrow.
both were terrible. Right. Yeah.
It's
It's
like the
crazy.
arrow. You create a problem, then you create a solution that's even worse than the problem. It's like, how about you just
Hmm.
stop? I
Don't do.
mean, that's the
Right.
value of Shabbat, the message of Shabbat, right? Resting, like take a day to just stop doing what you're doing. Like, how do you even know what you're doing is good? You know, like, what if you just stopped completely for one day and let
Just
the whole,
thought about it.
yeah, just let the holiness of
Yeah.
God occupy your space and just reflect for a moment, you know, or like the Day of Atonement is such a useful day as well, like to afflict yourself. Because, I mean, there's no fast days. In Rabbinic Judaism, there's like 5, 6 fast days a year, and there's Lent and there's Ramadan and all this stuff. In the Torah, there's one day of affliction, just one day where you have to actually afflict yourself and you actually have to put yourself through that deprivation in order to experience affliction, in order to actually atone for your sins. Because, I mean, we're we do a lot wrong, and I don't think people like even take something like we were talking about the Rosh Hashanah thing, right? Like, oh, it's a new year, Happy New Year. Then you look in the Torah, and the Torah says it's a day of remembrance. It's actually the first day of the seventh month, and it's a day of remembrance. So to them, they have two extremes. First of all, they say it's the Happy New Year, which it's not. It's the seventh month. The New Year is actually
Right.
at Passover time. Second of all, they also say
Yeah.
it's a
If you
court case in heaven, and God is judging you in heaven for what will happen to the entire year, right? And so they go to the synagogue and everyone's afraid. They're like, oh God, like today he's deciding if I'm going to live or die or if I'm going to get sick or I'm going to.
it's oh man, I hate that.
So
Yeah.
simultaneously, they're creating false celebration and false fear, right? Which is like the
Yeah.
perfect manipulation tools instead of what the Torah actually says, which is remember, think, sit with yourself, introspection, like depth, clarity, awakening, right? Things that are actually like spiritually elevated terms that you have to like sit for a second and be like, well, what do I have to remember? And what is it that I need to put my mind to on this day to when I take a rest and I blow the sound the blast and I awaken myself and be
Mm.
like, but how many blasts? 99 or 100? Is it two 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 or
Oh,
two two two
yeah, I hate
or
it.
two 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 two?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh, you're fucking insane. Okay, I get it. Now can I go worship God? And then instead of how dare you, right?
Yeah.
The reality is
Yeah.
like none of this is from God. It's wild that this stuff has been mainstreamed into Judaism, and that's what frustrates me so much because I see the richness of the Torah, and then I see how it's abused by these people who claim to be the Jews, who claim to be what God wants, who claim to do what God tells you to do, and that's completely wrong. And as Ben Joseph says, everyone looks below the pew. If you find the golden ticket, you are saved for the year. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's the one that really irks me. Like, there's a lot of the things in the Talmud that just makes me annoyed because they're like belittling God's intelligence or his character.
Mm.
The Yom Kippur one really irks me because it basically is like, okay, everyone receives all the blessings they will receive. If they're going to die this year, they're going to die this year, which, it already has like predeterminism. And I don't subscribe to predeterminism. I think we all have free will. That's its own debate. But within that view, you're basically making God responsible for all things at all times. And you don't really have much of a choice. And in the Torah, it says, I'm setting before you life and death. So choose life, and you entirely remove that from the context of the rabbinic version of Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
You're not
Also,
choosing anything.
yeah, yeah. I
It
mean,
just
God is
happens.
not with us exactly because I agree with you. Like the way that free choice functions is that God is with you in every moment, and He's watching you. He's like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" But in this idea, it's complete predeterminism. And so what they do is they they prolong the fear, right? And so what they do is they say, "Okay, it's Rosh Hashanah. God is writing it, and Yom Kippur, God
Right.
is sealing it,
Ah, yeah,
but you
yes.
still
Yeah.
have another chance, which is
You have two
Hoshana
weeks.
Hoshana Rabbah, which is a completely fabricated rabbinic holiday, which is like the last day of Sukkot. They bang like
Oh
seven
yeah.
a bundle of 7 willow branches on the floor, and they're like "Oy, oy, Hoshana" and all this stuff. And so this Hoshana Rabbah day, you actually get your final salvation. But what if you still didn't do it, you bad little boy? Then you have till Hanukkah. And on Hanukkah, that's the
Mm-hmm.
day of where we. So again, the point is they're prolonging this ridiculous fake drama that they've manufactured. When the Torah is telling you, remember, sit in introspection, afflict yourself, God will atone for you, move on, live the year, go out into the wintertime, take care of yourself, like
Mm.
celebrate the harvest, the ingathering of the harvest, which is Sukkot. Instead, they're creating
Yeah.
all of this insane drama. Another one you might like regarding the rabbinic holidays, because it occurred to me, you're asking me where they deviate from the Torah. Listen to this one, because you talk about the mockery of
For
God.
Sukkot.
For Purim. Purim
Oh, okay.
is the holiday that celebrates the story in the book of Esther, where Esther became the queen
Mm.
of Persia and she
It's
saved the Jews.
man-made. Yeah.
It's entirely man-made. I mean, it's a man-made holiday.
Yeah.
They accepted it upon themselves. But great, you accepted it upon yourself. It's not a law of God. No, okay, no worries. They still say God commanded us to read the Megillah, which is the book of Esther on Purim. They say the blessing God commanded us to do this. They create a whole hedonistic day where they say you should get so drunk that you don't know the difference between blessed is Mordechai and cursed is Haman. So Mordechai is the hero and Haman is the villain. You should be
Mm.
complete confusion as to what right and wrong is. Get to the point where you're entirely gone from reality and you dress up and it's like a whole eyes wide shut Halloween party. Okay, leave all that aside. The rabbis say that that day of Purim is greater than Yom Kippur, is greater than the Day of Atonement. This is brought down in the Zohar, the Arizal, and the Vilna Gaon, who are all these
Mm.
great Kabbalistic rabbis. What do they say? They say that, and you'll, as someone who's becoming a Hebrew speaker, you'll understand the idiocy of this statement on a linguistic level. But first, just on a moral level, it's abhorrent to claim that your made-up holiday is more important than God's Day of Atonement, which is
Right.
the Sabbath's
Yeah.
eternal decree, right? Um, but what is their proof? Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim, right? Yom Kippurim, which means Day of the Atonements. And they say in Hebrew it's Yom Kippurim. It's the day like Purim, because Purim is like Purim, meaning
Yeah.
Yom Kippur is only like Purim. It's not as great as Purim. Now, for anyone who doesn't understand how insane this is, the word for Purim, the root word is pur, which means lottery, because Haman cast lotteries to see what day to kill the Jews. The day of Yom Kippur is the root word is kaper, which means atonement. Okay, and Kippurim just means atonements plural. So what's happening is
Hmm.
not only linguistically is this so asinine, it's scary that they get away with this stuff. The same way, by the way, they say that it says in the Torah there are Torot, there are laws, and they say, well, there's multiple Torahs, so now there's the written Torah and the oral Torah, as if there aren't multiple Torahs in the Torah, multiple laws in the book of the law. They say that Yom Kippur is only like Purim, and Purim's greater, even though Purim means
Hmm.
lottery and Kippur means atonement. And obviously, Yom Kippurim is the day of God, the day of God's atonement, and Purim is a rabbinic hedonist festival. So, yeah, just shocking stuff out of these people who claim to be God fearing, who claim to be upholding the Torah, while simultaneously completely deconstructing the Torah and stomping all over it.
Right. Yeah, that's one of my big gripes of Rosh Hashanah 16b is like from from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, the holy wicked people they're sealed for death, the holy righteous people are sealed for life, and the middling people they have like they can get their act together. But it's like if God is truly just and truly like knows like if he's controlling everything, then why have the 9 days to fix your act? And
I'll tell you
it's
why.
just it's
I'll tell you
nonsense, dude.
why. For every one of those days, you show up to shul, you give a
Yeah,
donation,
then you
you
like
make sure
increase yourself.
that you
Yeah.
pay to open up the ark when they say the prayer, and then you pay another thing when they auction things off on Shabbat and on the holidays.
Oh,
Their biggest business days are Shabbat and the holidays. I should tell you something about the only days prohibited in work are the biggest business days for the shul. So is the shul really God fearing? Absolutely not.
no.
Absolutely not. This again. There's no commandment in the Torah to go to synagogue. There
Mm,
isn't. So what are these
right.
people doing?
Yeah.
And they
Earlier,
say, yeah. Hmm.
I was gonna say earlier, Stephen, whenever you were talking about how beautiful and amazing Sabbath is, he's like, "Listen up." He's been trying to get me to follow Sabbath for like, I don't know, 9 months now.
Do
So
it. Do
yeah,
it.
I kind of am now, just not nearly the thing. But he
Well,
also like he fully follows all the festivals. He also does like Sukkot properly. He has his own tabernacle he sets up and he camps out in with the other community members in where he lives and yeah. Yeah, you
well,
can absolutely hop on, Ash. I will email it to you because my phone's my camera, so I can't text it to you. But I'll email it to you if you want.
yeah.
I'll
Look,
hop on.
I'll just tell you. Do you mind if I talk while you bring him on?
Yeah, that's fine. I have to pee here in a second too, but if you want to go ahead and talk.
No worries. Yeah, I was just going to say that, you know, you my reading of Shabbat is that you keep it from Saturday morning, because
Right.
only Passover and Yom Kippur are we specified to begin in the previous evening. But you start. It's
Mm,
just literally the day of Saturday. All you have to do is cook your food on Friday, and you can heat it up in the microwave. But just have it cooked before Shabbat. Stay at home, and don't light a
mm,
fire. Don't burn a fire. That's it. So
yeah.
there's really not much more that you have to do, which
Yeah.
is great. I mean, and it's a beautiful day because
So,
every day
fellas,
you're always doing something.
Hey, brother.
Hey Ash, how are you?
Israel, I gotta ask you a question, man.
Go ahead.
When you got dressed this morning, did you put on your right shoe first or your left shoe?
Oh man, don't call me out like that on live television.
Did you tie the left one first?
You know, I didn't even wear shoes with laces today.
Oh, well,
um,
that's bear with me, man.
but no, I've been trying to unlearn that. I've been like forcefully putting on my left one and then my right one. or
Brother, I'm not even joking. I'll be like out the door on my way to church Sunday morning, be like, I did it again. I put my tied the left one first.
yeah.
I'm glad I didn't grow up with any of that stuff because I'm not Orthodox. We had one person ask me, like, Chris, how come you know Hebrew and know Talmud? Those seem kind of far away from a Christian. Well, first off, Ani Lomid to be of it's like I don't actually know. I'm learning. I'm getting there, but I'm still in the process of learning. Like, I know grammar, I can read and write it just fine. I've read much of the Torah in Hebrew, but I'm nowhere near fluent, especially because I don't talk to anyone in it. So, like, you can't gain fluency without talking actively, doing conversation.
You've read most of the Torah in Hebrew?
Not I've read most of Genesis and a lot of Exodus and portions of Leviticus. I've not done anything in Deuteronomy, and I've not done much in Numbers, other
I'm
than
gonna
like
corrupt
the
your
specific
Hebrew
words.
with Israeli slang.
What was that?
I'm gonna corrupt your. Can you hear me okay, or is it just probably my phone?
It's fine. It's just a little muffled, but we can hear
I said I'm gonna corrupt your Hebrew. I'm gonna mix you up with Israeli slang and confuse
you. Well, I only have the biblical Hebrew right now. That's my current goal. So all I'm doing right now, like this book, just works you through all of Job, all of Daniel, which has Aramaic in it, and then all of Genesis. So I'm working my way through. Like I've studied, like I've taught Genesis 1 in Hebrew on my channel before. So like I've done sections of it, but I'm not nearly deep enough in Hebrew to call myself a Hebrew speaker. I'm not so arrogant to know that I obviously do not speak Hebrew.
Well,
But
look, if you know the Torah's Hebrew, you know the Hebrew you have to know. I mean, you might not be able to, as Ash is saying, you might not be able to communicate with a hoodlum in
right.
Israel, but you that doesn't matter.
Israel, did you go to yeshiva in Israel?
I didn't go to yeshiva in Israel. No, I went to yeshiva.
Hoodlums in the yeshivas too in Israel.
I know. I was too religious to go to Israel. So the way that the yeshiva I was in, if you go to Israel right after high school, you're actually not religious enough. So like the kind of the at-risk yeshiva boys would get sent to Israel right away, so they can go through that whole process where they get dumped into the streets and then they have to come running back to the Rebbe after 6 months. But if you're like a true Talmud scholar, you just go straight to the East Coast. Which I'm from the West Coast. We'd go to the East Coast, like in New York, New Jersey area, which is where the Shar Yashuv is low on the list. That's for Baal Chuvas.
Yeah.
Well,
I have family members that went there.
Yeah. Have you? I actually went to elementary school right next to a Chabad yeshiva in LA. So it's interesting. I don't know if you've been.
I used to. It's funny because people always doubt my Jewish background because I'm a Christian, so you automatically must be a liar, right?
Of course.
But basically, I'm like I used to get up. I went from Chabad to a Dati Leumi school afterwards, so I didn't stay in the yeshiva program, the yeshiva system. But I kind of left that, and then instead of going to school, I would go to mikvah at 4:30 in the morning and go to like Shir Chassidut at like 5, and I'd study till like 7, and then davening, and then Kitzur Shulchan Aruch afterwards with one of the other rabbis, then Gemara with Rav David Shochet in Lubavitch in Toronto.
Okay, and you went to the army too, right?
Yeah, that's when I moved to Israel. I went to the army.
Wow. Yeah, you definitely earned your Jewish stripes. The mikvah in the morning, that's the peak of Chassidut.
Yeah, but I would purposely, I would go, I offered to unlock it sometimes because I wanted to go before any of the creeps went in.
Oh my God. Yeah. My favorite, we were talking about how they put new vessels in the mikvah earlier. But my favorite one is when men would bring their vessels into the men's mikvah because, like, I don't know, the Kalim
It's so
mikvah,
wacky.
the mikvah for the vessels was locked, so men would bring their
You're,
wives' pots and pans to the men's mikvah.
no, it's great, Chris. You're naked in the mikvah trying to like immerse yourself for like ritual immersion, and some asshole is trying to sharpen his new shit, like Teufel his new chef's knife.
Ugh. You're gonna get a second you're gonna get a second circumcision there.
Like, don't drop that thing anywhere near me.
Oh man, then you lose your testicles and become not fit for priesthood. Yeah,
Well,
man. No, I
And
can't.
there's always the one very pious rabbi who like goes in and farts very audibly.
yeah, the whole mikvah experience. I mean, they bring young children to the mikvah too, which is so disturbing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like
Man.
it's basically like a gay club, as far as I'm concerned. Like, shit's so gay, it's disgusting. It's literally
Yeah,
awful.
but it's not
Yeah.
uniquely a rabbinic thing. I mean, Turkish people do that also.
No, I know.
Right.
I
So
find all
Japanese.
I find it
Yeah.
all to be disgusting.
Yeah, it's kind of
I mean,
disgusting.
I
it's
mean,
like these
if it's
people
your
leave.
entire culture and you grow up with it, it's not as bad. So like the Asian cultures all have it. Like they have massive communal baths, which is kind of like it's kind of gross when you think about it. Like of that, like the onisons of like, hey, you have 200 people all naked in the bath together. You hopefully they clean themselves before you get in. Otherwise, that's gonna be a lot of feces in the water.
So gross. So
But-
gross.
Although if it's the magic cleaning water, then it's fine.
Yes,
But-
if it's the mikvah water that they made the waters
They
kiss.
kissed. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, even the water of purification in the Old Testament, like the ashes of the red heifer, is not some like, because again, like I hate it when people mischaracterize the Torah. The Torah is giving you a soap recipe. Like ashes of cows have lye. That's antimicrobial. That's going to cleanse you. And then you'll have all the other agents as well. That's going to be a purifying oil that also makes you smell good, which is the hyssop that has trace amounts of penicillin on it. And the cedar is abrasive. So it's like lava soap that is antimicrobial and has traces amount of penicillin and a healing oil that repairs infection and inflammatory reactions. So like the soap recipe in the Bible is super based, and it would actually cleanse you, actually heal you if you were to bathe in it. But just like having the waters kiss and calling that good enough to cleanse all like impurities in the water,
Yeah,
that's
but also
kind of nonsense.
also remember, it's nothing to do with their water is just rainwater. It's glorified rainwater. They take rainwater and put it in a pit and claim it's now living water. It's like, why is it living water if it's now stagnant in a pit? That's not the definition of living water. What's funny is
There's an upper chamber and a lower chamber, and it's enough cubits that it moves. Come on, man.
It
doesn't get stagnant whatsoever. There's no bacteria there.
It's not stagnant.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody manually filter it out all the time.
Seems alive to me, very artificially alive. It's on a what's it called? When someone's breathing on a ventilator. Yeah.
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 Healing you already. Yeah.
Yeah, and again,
So-
there's a ritual purification here too. It's ritual fundamentally, but it's an interesting point that you're making that there's also health benefits and even scent, like the idea that you get sprayed by the waters of the red heifer and now you smell good. I mean, it's kind of cool.
That's
like
pretty
that,
based. That's really cool.
That adds to the experience for sure.
Yeah. No, like, and it's better quality than the soap we're using now. So it's like, it's almost as if there's a god who knew how to deal with germs. And like, even like the clay jars, like if you have an infectious mold or a defiling mold, if it is on some materials like leather, you can just wipe it off. It's fine. If it's other materials like clay, you have to destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because God knows that you can't actually remove clay from anything unless you were to like refire it. But if you refire it, it's going to become brittle and unusable. So just destroy it, because God knows how germs work, how invisible molds work. So we have all of this like germ theory that God is teaching the Israelites in their kosher laws and in their disease management systems, like doing quarantine. Like these are all advanced techniques that we now do to reduce disease spread. And that was given 3,000 years ago. to this random tribe
And then the
in the
rabbis
desert.
in the Talmud decide that everything's related to demons in the bathroom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I mean,
And the demons are so
contrary.
much fun.
Oh yeah.
That's my favorite passage.
Surprise!
Yeah.
Shalom.
Hello.
Dude.
You want to see something
For those who
super
haven't read
based?
the Talmud,
You want to see something
you look
super
super
based?
based.
Check this
What?
out. This is super based. Look, you go to this wall in my house, you see dreidels that are still up from Hanukkah. Still
Yeah,
have the
nice.
dreidels, and then right above that, I have the 3 holy hierarchs.
Wow. It's Christmas.
Nice. Based.
Well, look, I mean,
That's super based.
contrary to the Torah, to the rabbi's claim that you need to immerse in a mikveh in order to achieve purity, the Torah actually just says wash in water, right? So
Mhm.
turns out that God's just telling you take a shower, dude. Like I don't know, you're like full of semen, you know, or like
Yeah,
just
like
take a
say
shower,
hygiene.
you know. But so it is hygienic, you know. Take a shower and launder your clothing, and they interpret that as immerse in the mikveh. In fact, in the Art Scroll Jewish translation, they say immerse in water. That's false translation. The Hebrew word is rachatz, which means to wash, and they say the word for taval, which means immerse, and they say you shall immerse in water when they're just actually trying to promote their view that you have to immerse in a mikvah all the time. But in the Torah, Leviticus 15, it just says wash with water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
So Jack asked, do they have bathroom gin? Yes, they absolutely do have bathroom gin. This is in Piscayum 110A and B. So if you've never read that section, like you've never read the Talmud, I would recommend it's really fun. It's like 20 pages of just straight nonsense about demons and witches, and like the whole thing with the even versus odd numbers, and if you do anything in even numbers, it's going to kill you, except for all the even numbers that God commands you to follow. Like, and then they go through all those examples.
Definitely don't walk between 2 women, because if 2 women are sitting across from each other, they are most certainly witches.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I think
there's a palm tree, you can't walk by it.
They say you cannot walk behind a woman even if she's your wife.
Yeah.
Okay. So, God forbid you should be attracted to women. But I mean, I would say, like in the Orthodox community, you have to come out to your parents as straight. You're like, Daddy, Mommy, I like girls. And they're like, oh, no. Because like, God forbid.
So what do you guys do with? Well, I guess neither of you follow it, but what were you taught? Because I'm I'm reading the Talmud, so I'm reading the Talmud for those because you asked me why do I know Talmud. I'm reading through the entire Talmud. I'm like 20% of the way through it. I've been just destroying my brain reading it. And not in like it's like drab or evil or any of that. I've been doing too much reading of one thing that I anyway. In the Chaim 111, it has the way you get around the even and odd number, because if you can't walk alone at night, because the demons might get you if you're walking at night. So what you do as a rabbi is you put one thumb up and one thumb down, and you say, you and I are 3, because it's you plus one thumb and another thumb. And then if a demon says you and I are 4, and you say you and I are 5, and if they say, oh, you and I are 6, and you say, oh, you and I are 7, and then you keep doing that. Apparently, if you, according to one rabbi, if you get to 101, the demon explodes.
Oh my God, man.
What does that mean? I read that in the Talmud. I was like, what is this nonsense?
Yeah, if you're rock climbing, like out in the wilderness, and you happen to bump into your friend who's also an avid rock climber, it can't be that he's also an avid rock climber. That's actually a demon pretending to be your friend. So don't talk. If you meet your friend at the top of a mountain, do not greet him, because that's for sure a demon. I wanted to say, Israel, because technically I'm on your channel right now. Also, we got to it kind of. Would you say that this is kind of the easiest and most damning thing that you could already get to with rabbinic Judaism is the conversion process? Because essentially you are violating a biblical injunction to love the convert and superseding it with a rabbinical conversion process?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, we were discussing earlier the harm of the dehumanization of the rest of humanity, and I couldn't see more of a way of doing that by superseding the Torah law. Because again, they claim that the convert in the Torah is only referring to a convert who converts through rabbinic law, but the reality is that entire rabbinic process is not in the Torah. So again, it's very hard to talk to them because they see rabbinic law as synonymous with the law of Moses, and it's like, what are you supposed to do? It's a religious belief. It's not even it's not a historical belief. It's not a
But
practical
even
belief.
internally, Judaism makes the assertion that rabbinic ordinances are not allowed to contradict or violate a biblical injunction. So the question is, if somebody doesn't, they just, let's say somebody converted to Judaism, did everything properly through the rabbinic system, right? And even by rabbinic standards, they're a convert who's accepted. But now they decide that they don't accept the oral Torah anymore. And so they don't separate between chicken and dairy, for example, and they don't keep Shabbat according to rabbinical provisions. And now nobody wants to associate with them because they're not an observant Jew by rabbinic standards, even though they keep Torah law, and they can't get a job. They lose their job as a mashgiach or whatever converts do these days. But so you're hurting their income and their social status, and kind of like ostracizing them. So you're literally violating, even for the rabbinical conversion, which was valid, you're violating the law of welcoming the convert in favor of rabbinical ordinances about poultry, milk, being able to produce milk,
Right.
or whatever else.
Okay, I understand. You're saying once they were converted through rabbinic orthodoxy, and then they decide to not follow everything the rabbis say.
Yeah, you can't ostracize them in any way, because then you're violating a biblical injunction for any rabbinic command that they broke.
Right. Yeah. Again, but like they literally claim that priests are not allowed to marry converts because the Torah says you should not marry a defiled woman or like a desecrated woman or a whore. So now apparently that means you can't marry a convert either. And they tell priests, by the way, modern Kohanim, who claim to be priests because their last name's Cohen, which is a whole other joke in and of itself. But okay, so you're a priest and you can't marry a convert because you're so holy, when the Torah never says that. So I mean, they clearly discriminate against converts, even in the context of observant converts who are following the rabbis. But yeah, I see your point. Someone who converts and then goes away from the rabbis, they would ostracize them. I mean, they're also going against love your fellow as yourself. They would do that to someone who's born Jewish as well. I guess they would say like, oh, he's cut off from his people because he doesn't afflict himself on Yom Kippur properly. I don't know. They'd come up with some, or he doesn't sell his chametz to a goy, so I don't know. Like they'll come up with some excuse because they'll basically say he's cut off from the people, because he doesn't follow rabbinic law.
Well, that's a good point. Like they'll readily accept somebody who was an Orthodox Jew who like went off the derech and like ate leavened on Passover and violated Yom Kippur and committed sexual sin that's also like whatever death penalty incarnate it is, like by Torah standards, and they like do tshuva and they come back because like they weren't whoring around at this moment in particular, so they can come and get an aliyah. They'll be readily accepted back. But if somebody's literally a devout convert who doesn't wait the appropriate time between chicken and milk for that community standards, they'll ostracize them.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I know we like to beat up on Manis Friedman. One of the first videos I reacted to him was he was in a podcast with a guy, and he said, would I kick a homosexual out of my shul? Would I kick an adulterer out of my shul? I would have no congregation.
Pure honesty. I saw that.
He said, I would have no congregation left. And he starts laughing, right? It's like, yeah, you'd have no congregation left if you got rid of the people who were committing the worst sins in the Torah. I mean, that's very telling of the kind of congregation you have. But the reality is, I mean, they discriminate against converts in dating. It's like well known that they're like, oh, he's a convert, like you might want to stay away. So there's definitely discrimination that goes on even before the convert goes against the rabbis, because the majority of rabbinic converts are more devout than the Orthodox Jews themselves. But yeah, I mean, the minute you go against the rabbis, you're out. Whether you're born Jewish, whether you're a convert, there's no room for dissidents in their community.
We have a guy in our community who was a convert who literally became a sofer and like volunteered time, something you'd get paid a lot of money to, and he was like writing like scrolls for people for mezuzot, and all kinds of stuff, and like fixing their tefillin for free. And people would talk about it. They're like, oh, like somebody even referred to him as the goy once, And this
Nice.
is like an actual. This is somebody who's like a convert who's really, really devout.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
it's just
No, for sure.
unbelievable. That blew my mind. Like that was kind
For
of
sure.
one of the first things in my life that kind of like pushed me in the
Yeah.
other direction. I was like, wait a second, that's not okay. Like there's
Yeah.
something wrong there.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, and again, like they'll always say, "Oh, not everyone's like that," and you can't judge a whole group by one
No,
person, and that's
they're not,
true.
but there are people
You
like
know,
that, and they're
that's
accepted.
exactly. It kind of just comes back to that, which is, oh, not all the rabbis' opinions say that, but we also accept all the rabbis' opinions as the word of the living God. So the rabbi that says a non-Jew who studies Torah is deserving of death, and a rabbi who says a non-Jew who studies Torah is like a high priest, they're both right. So it's like, well, okay, then what do you really believe? And they have like an unending forgiveness for the rabbinic corruption, and that allows them to forgive their own corruption because they're like, well, King David didn't sin when he took a married woman and killed her husband. We
Right.
don't sin
Ugh.
when we distort the words of the Torah. Like everything's fine as long as we're the anointed one of God. Of course, they're just self-anointed, and it's
Mm.
it's really problematic. Again, the bottom line is I don't have a problem with these people saying their opinions, but they don't view what they're saying as opinion. They view it as the absolute word of God communicated to Moses on Mount Sinai in some secret communication. Like this. Apparently, Abraham was reading the Zohar.
Right.
Like,
No, he wrote Sefer Yetzirah.
yeah.
So I have a
Yeah.
question about the excommunication stuff. So obviously in Ketubot 28b, there is the kazaza ceremony where like the family goes and like if you marry a Gentile woman, you like cut the people off from the land, you like throw down clay pots and like barrels of fruit and like other random stuff to like separate them from your community. Have you ever seen anything even remotely close to that in any of the rabbinic circles where if someone goes out and like marries a goyim woman that they would go out and do this
I haven't
like
seen that.
where does
I'm
that
sure.
come from? What a
I'm sure.
nonsense is that?
I mean, they don't even observe their own laws. It's terrible. But
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
sure. I'm sure Ash has heard this idea that the rabbis would sit shiva. It's called like the 7 day
Yeah.
mourning period for their child if they would convert to Christianity or if they would marry a non-Jew. So there's that, like the idea like you're dead to me, you're done. So I don't know if they like
Mm.
I don't know if they like throw their fruits on the floor, but they definitely. Um, Metaphorically throw the fruit of their lives, their children, they
Yeah.
throw them away.
My parents are not, and none of my siblings have sat Shiva for me becoming a Christian, mostly because they're not retarded.
Mhm.
But,
That's good.
yeah.
That's good.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
But there is a
Uh,
zero tolerance rule for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just excommunicate immediately. Could they come back into it if the Gentile woman converts to rabbinic Judaism, or would it still just be like a no, you did something that we don't approve of, you're over there now?
No, you can come back from the dead if you pay enough money.
The one thing that the Orthodox community takes pride in is that you'll always come back, and that's
Yeah.
the funny thing.
Mm.
It's like they allow their people to just go to the ends of the earth, but you'll always come back, and they're sitting there just waiting for you to come crying back to them because that's kind of their game plan. Essentially, is like they know that what they offer is ultimately superior to what the secular world has to offer, so they just know that you're going to circle back eventually. Like, where are you going to have a community with families and this and that? Like
Yeah.
they kind of rely on the fact that people will come back to them, and they do. They as long as you come groveling on the floor and say, "Rebbe, I am your slave for eternity," they'll take you back.
That's
That's
interesting.
that's pretty reliable. But yeah, what's so remarkable is that they would rather you marry a Jewish woman and be an atheist, nihilist, bad person, okay, than
Buddhist. Yeah.
yeah, than actually marry a non-Jew and be Torah observant and be God fearing. So like in my case, I'm not doing anything wrong, right? I'm married to a woman, having children, living a God fearing life, following all the laws in the Torah without adding or subtracting. Yet somehow I'm worse off than a kid who just goes off the derech, as they call it, leaves the path of
Right.
Judaism, but marries a Jew, for example. Like at
Right.
least we're all still Jews, So it just shows this such a superficial understanding of God that
Mm.
God cares more about your comfort zone, your cultural comfort zone, more than actually fear of God and observance of His commandments. It's tragic, really.
So I was going to ask you about the derek whenever Ash mentioned it, because like one of the first phrases I had to learn in Hebrew all the time was Hamelech roe derek, like the king sees the way. And the way is obviously in the Talmud, it's all over the place. Like if you're like keeping like the way to salvation or the way of keeping Torah, that's very important. That's actually where Muslims get it from. That's part of the Islamic dilemma or the Talmudic dilemma. How important for you personally, or is there any form of imperance of this like way of like there is one proper derek to follow as a Torah observant Jew, versus like the way that the rabbinics present it way differently. They have this very set guideline that you have to follow.
What was that, Rebbe?
Eric Eretz Kodma LaTorah.
Yes,
Yeah.
the way of the world is before the Torah, which is another way of saying like you have to be nice before you follow the Torah. Which again, I mean, in theory, it's actually a decent statement. It kind of ties into what we were talking about before. Like, does your humanity come before your Torah observance? But of course, actually, the derech eretz, another term for an ignoramus in rabbinic literature, is a am haaretz, like a person of the
Right, person of the land.
yeah, man of the land, like just a nobody. So, but derech eretz in modern Jewish language just refers to like overall niceness, but it doesn't refer to any qualitative thing. But what was your question again? I forgot.
Oh, do you have one set way you think that people
Oh,
must
yeah.
follow the Torah, or do you think that there are like multiple possibilities within Torah
I
observance, or
think
like
within Torah observance there is a degree of ambiguity and interpretation, especially in the current situation of Israel being scattered and exiled
no
around the
temple and
world.
all that?
No
Yeah.
temple, no centralized authority, no court system, no
Mm,
prophecy, none of that. So like there's
Thank
bound.
you.
You're out. Hey, good to
Yeah.
see you.
right. See you, brother.
God bless. Due to the fact that there is no centralized authority, no united people in the land of Israel following the Torah, it would actually be impossible to come to any sort of real consensus or anything like that. So that being said, obviously, it's possible to have a variety of interpretations for multiple different things. However, one thing's for sure: if you follow the Torah, the written word, without adding or subtracting, right, then you are most definitely going to be on the same page. Because what are we really arguing about? Like, whether tefillin are literal or not, right?
Right.
That's. I mean,
Yeah.
the point is that
Like
you
if you
have.
need I guess
Mhm.
if you need like a temple to sacrifice, or could you just set up another tabernacle?
Well,
Oh,
again,
like in the law, it does say like you're supposed to be doing it at the temple from here on out.
exactly. In the law,
Yeah.
it says you cannot sacrifice outside of the tabernacle. It says you can only do it in the places God chooses. It says that the priesthood could only be the descendants of Aaron. So we're given all these conditionals that really don't even make it a possibility, let alone a practicality in a situation like this where Israel is fractured and there isn't even an
Right.
attempt to do these things in any serious Torah-based way.
Mm.
So, I mean,
There's
what does
no
that tell?
judges. There's no king.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
what does that tell us about the state of Israel? It tells us that
Right.
Israel is not at that place. And so, for again, the rabbis to have 10,000 tractates of the Talmud dealing with, how do you slaughter the animal and where do you put the blood? And when you read
Right.
for example, like you'll read Tractate Yoma, right, which is referring to the Yom Kippur sacrifices. In the Torah, it's like abundantly clear. The entire sacrificial thing is mentioned in Leviticus.
Yeah. 1 through 9.
And no, there's that, but I'm talking about the Yom Kippur sacrifices.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's an entire
Yeah.
tractate in the Talmud and the Mishnah that discuss what the Yom Kippur sacrifice. In the Torah, it's just one chapter. In Leviticus, it's chapter 16 of Leviticus. Chapter 16 of Leviticus discusses the high priest, and it has like the goat to God, the goat to Azazel, the one they send to the wilderness.
Mhm.
But they go into like this insane level of detail, making all these claims and methods that are not in the Torah. But the point is, there isn't even a functioning temple at that point.
Yeah.
Like when we see the
There's no
Jewish
Cohen to
people,
even do that practice to begin with.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So when we see the Jewish people obsessing over their non-existent temple and their non-existent priesthood,
Mm.
as if that's even at the core of their religion at all. When God came on the mountain, he wasn't talking about sacrifices and priesthood. He was talking about what kind of person are you? How are you going to live? So again, it comes into this point that I make often, which is, where are we? Are we living in the unknown future, or are we living in the present moment? Are we living in what will happen that we don't know actually what will happen, and we can only sit here and decipher vague prophecies, or can we actually just focus on what God wants from us right now. And the mere fact that the situation we find ourselves in now is the one that we find ourselves in now is evidence of the fact that we should be focusing on the things that are relevant to us in our day-to-day lives, which involve our personal relationship with God, which involve the integrity of our inner world, which involve the productive, fruitful relationships that we need to have in our own life. And that's actually what God wants for us. And if we do that, then God says, I will return you to the land. Then God says, I will make you more fruitful and numerous than your ancestors. Then you can see the redemption happen. But if we're not going to take the first step, nothing's going to happen. So people are like focused on the last step. Like, obviously you can't climb a ladder like 2-3 rungs at a time. You have to go step by step. It's elementary.
There's this really fun comment. So a Torah loving Gentile, me, a rabbi rebelling Jew doesn't know Yeshua, you, and a Yeshua loving Jew who went to Catholicism, Ash, who left, walk into a live stream getting heckled by a Torah observant follower of Yeshua, him. This is the ultimate bar joke. It's like a priest or rabbi and a Gentile walk into a bar. And
That's funny.
Yeah,
there's definitely a lot of comedy here, and I'm glad that we can at least have this conversation. I mean, obviously we agree and disagree on multiple topics, but the important thing is that we can at least talk, and that's the problem increasingly, is that the people are not able to actually talk to one another, and there's just further and further divides among people. When if we could at least agree on the fundamentals, people have their different relationships, their different ways of conceptualizing God, but there needs to be freedom in God first and foremost, and
right.
I think the Torah again facilitates that in a universal way that's just beautiful.
I think it's the only way you can do it, because everything else falls short. Because obviously Yahweh is God. Like, we can agree on that pretty wholeheartedly. And like, humans are made in the image of God. We are all equal before God. There's no division there. Even the fact that God specifically put it in the order of he created everything, he created man, he made all men equal before him, and then he singled out his covenant people after the fact, shows that the first priority was that all humans are made in the image of God, including the non-Jews. So even though that this is like the Jewish book, which demonstrates all of their failures and shortcomings, which adds to its credibility, because that's like the criterion of embarrassment for historical reliability. If someone is making something up, they wouldn't make up something that is embarrassing of themselves. So if it is embarrassing of themselves, they're likely including it because it actually happened. So you have a good amount of reliability for the Torah. It's been archaeologically verified dozens of times in so many different ways. And we have God first establishing that all people are made equal before him, and then he singled out his covenant that will then bring him to the world. So it's not that the Jews are different and special because God hates everyone else. No, God loves everyone, and he wants the Jews to be faithful to him so that all come to him. And that is such a beautiful and amazing thing, and something that we can all agree on and love God and love each other for, is that I am not, you are my brother. Technically, we're all cousins because we all come from Adam and Eve, and we all come from Moses and his children. So at the back, like right away, we're everyone who's alive on the planet right now are cousins. We're just like 20 steps removed from each other. But technically, we're all cousins. So you can say, hey, what up, cuz, to anyone, and it's technically true. But either way, even beyond that, you are my brother, you're my spiritual brother, and we can communicate, even though we don't agree on everything. I enjoy our conversations quite a lot. I think the people who watch seem to enjoy them. Why can't it be that we can have civil disagreements, loving disagreements, where we can look at something as amazing as the Torah and both be like, yeah, this is an amazing book, obviously from God. And then like, well, I interpreted this your way, you interpreted that way. We can discuss the differences there, and then both poke fun of the rabbis that come centuries later and change all of it. I think there should be this unity within the Jews and Christians because we worship the same God. Now, if you want to say that the Christian version of it's not actually Yahweh, I would be like, I mean, I guess you can hold that position, but we believe it's Yahweh that we're worshiping. We follow the Old Testament. Like, we include that in our holy scriptures. We believe the Torah is written by God at Sinai by Moses. We have very similar backstories up until Jesus. Uh, why can't we be in relationship with each other?
I
Why does there
agree.
have to be this hostility?
Yeah, I think we should definitely find the brotherhood and all that, and understand that Moses convinced God not to destroy Israel on not on their own merits, but on the merits of other people seeing that God
Hmm.
is too unforgiving. And Moses says,
Right.
what are the other nations going to say? And that's how he
Yeah.
appeals to God, and that changes God's mind, which clearly shows that God's agenda here was to make a demonstration to the world that he is a kind,
Hmm.
just God who saves people from slavery, who gives them the formula for life, who appoints them and blesses them and gives them an opportunity. And Israel is either going to be a light unto the nations, or it's going to be a talking point and a conversation piece for everyone to kind of shake their heads at and be like, oh no, what happened to these people? Right? And both of those futures are outlined in the Torah as like, you can either be this blessing to the world that's an example for everyone to see goodness, or you can be this curse to the world where everyone can be like, oh my God, how do these people get so cursed? And there's obviously a little bit of all of that combined, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, the Jewish people have not been able to steer clear from the curses, and it can always be identified as their
Of
lack
course.
of observance of the Torah. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
abundantly clear. Um, and yeah, so yeah, thank God for that opportunity. And as you said, like, view all human beings as your kinsmen. We're all fellows. Love your fellow as yourself, your fellow man. Right? We're all human beings. There's even again, one of the destructive statements in the Talmud, and with regards to purity rituals with the red heifer, it says a man who dies in the tent. And the rabbis say that this law doesn't apply to non-Jews because non-Jews are not considered man. Okay, Adam. So it says you are called Adam, and non-Jews are not called
Mm,
Adam. Right? And it's
yeah. They're the people of the land.
like, how in the
Yeah.
world can you say that
Right.
Adam, which is the biblical term for human being, the patriarch of
Right.
mankind's name was Adam, and now you're
Right.
saying that non-Jews are not, like, what are we
Hmm.
doing here? Why are you saying this? What is your motivation? And why in the world should I listen to you? Because if I listen to you, I'm denouncing my own connection to the rest of humanity. I'm denouncing God's creation, right? This is like just so destructive to the max. And um, there again, as Ash was saying, there's no way to redeem yourself. Even the convert who's living the perfect life according to the rabbis, oh, the goy, right? So it's not even coming
Hmm.
from a place. It's not a God-fearing place that this is coming from. It's coming from a very primitive tribal mentality where people,
Prideful.
yeah, are prideful. They're afraid of other people. They instead project their insecurities on others. They have a bunch of corrupt people leading them, telling them that they're righteous, and then they have to follow them. And it just looks a lot like degraded human life, which is on display in every culture all over the world, in every religion and secular government um, across the globe for most of history. So the idea that the Jews would be immune to that is the joke here. Obviously, as I was saying, the Jews are a conversation piece to the world where people can say, oh, look, their example. They're chosen as an example. To be an example for what? To be an example of how good you can be, and to be an example about how bad you can be. And
Right.
again, it's all a choice. So I think it's high time that we actually take the message here, the message of history, that, as you said, the Jews were honest enough to write down on paper and be like, damn, we screwed up. And it was clearly beyond their control whether or not that stuff would be recorded, because it was immediately disseminated across the entire world, and there was nothing anyone
Hmm.
could do about it. And so the cat's out of the bag. Now, if we're not going to wake up to that fact, then we're going to continue to fall into these pitfalls. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, people are dying because of this. People are getting murdered because of this. People are being cursed by God because of this. All of the curses in the Torah that are described are mental, physical. The lack of fertility, the mental illness, the confusion, the war, the unrest. All these things, they're a product of our own immorality. God is telling us that. God is telling us that you're
Hmm.
suffering the consequences of your own actions. So, you know, he dealt the blow. He can heal us. He says, it says in Exodus, I am Yahweh, your healer, right? Yahweh is the healer.
Hmm.
He's the one who can help us. Your local doctor is not going to heal you. Your local rabbi is not going to instruct you. God will heal you. God will instruct you. God will be the one who saves you. And all you can do is be the best version of yourself and be worthy of that.
You again kind of paraphrased Romans with you're being afflicted because you're not actually following God, you're not actually in a relationship with him. And you
Well,
gave
that's
similar
that's
categories, which was funny. Anyway,
okay, cool. But I mean, that's the
um,
Torah too, right? Of
yeah,
course, the Torah creates
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
blessing and curse
Right. Yeah,
situation there. But yeah, I'm not up
almost as
to
if Paul was teaching from the Old Testament. Anyway,
almost as if
uh,
he was a Jew who knew the Bible.
yeah, imagine that, crazy. Stephen said, "God bless both of you, my fellow sons of Adam. May Chris come to see the light of the Torah lifestyle, and may Israel, both this man and all Israel, come to see the light of Yeshua."
Mm.
Yeah, he's pushing hard for, I guess, me and you. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm obviously not insulted for you. I'd be happy for you to follow the Torah. But again, I just don't know what that means. Like the light of Yeshua, what does that mean? Like that
Right.
what? I just don't like.
Him
Again,
came as God and sacrifice.
let's just say I granted you that. How does that change anything?
Right. So it would just be we believe in whenever you actually come to accept Yeshua as both Messiah and as Yahweh, that you are called you're born again. You're given a new nature and the sin nature is taken away from you, and you are granted into the eternal salvation and life in the
So
next life.
do Christians not sin?
No, but the sin is no longer counted against us. So
You're not
we
held
work
accountable for your sin.
we're so Jesus is held accountable for our sin on our behalf, and we are working towards sanctification, where we are working towards holiness, where we stop sinning. But ultimately, we're not going to achieve perfect sinlessness in this world. So perfect sinlessness would come in the next world in glorification, whenever sin is removed, and we have the cross. That's the payment for our sin.
So
But
look,
you
let's
can't be
just
flippant about it.
yeah. So here's the thing. Like
Yeah.
I believe whatever's true. Let me just preface that.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to
Yeah.
make proclamations of faith. Um,
Mm.
all I will say is that if it's true that God came to this world in the form of Jesus Christ, and through him kind of being an example, showing us how bad we are, showing us that we're literally going to kill. By the way, happening in Israel too, which obviously is just crazy. Like the whole thing is just happening in Israel, right? The Jews are going to kill him because he's going against the rabbis and against the orthodoxy, um, and like all he's saying is like, be good and follow the Torah and stuff like that. Fine, but if I worship Yahweh, then by your definition, I'm worshiping Jesus. And if I believe
Right.
that Yahweh is my salvation, and that Yahweh obviously atones for us, and Yahweh obviously bears the weight of our sins, because I certainly am not bearing the full weight of my sins. And Yahweh is the one who saves me, and if I do what He says, then I'll be rewarded in the here and now and for eternity. I just don't see practically the difference. The only problem is for me, as someone who's Torah observant, if I begin to make proclamations of faith, like I believe in a God that is three. Now I'm calling into
Mm.
question my Torah belief, which says you must believe God is one. If I start saying,
Right.
God is Jesus, now I'm calling into to question my Torah belief, which says God is Yahweh, and if someone comes to you with another God, you should reject it, right? So I
Mm.
don't want to enter into that territory. I prefer to just
Right.
say, I believe in Yahweh. I believe in God the Father.
Mm.
And that's, again, the first line of the Nicene Creed. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. All right. So according to you, the
Right.
Father includes Jesus Christ. So be it.
Mm.
That's for God to figure out how He makes sense of all His infinite parts and attributes. For me,
Right.
I can only deal with the revelation that's told to me in the Torah, and I run into genuine risk as someone who's Torah observant to change my beliefs from one to three, to change my
Right.
beliefs from Yahweh to Jesus. And I
Mm.
don't see a need to do that even from the perspective that you're giving me, which is, don't worry, Yahweh just manifested in the flesh, and he took on the burden of your sins. So it's like,
Right.
thank you. Thank you. I still have to wake up tomorrow morning, brush my teeth, comb my hair, and not be an evil son of a bitch. So, like
Mm.
I'm sure that I mean, it's undoubtedly the case that the story of Jesus has had a huge impact on the world and has been the vehicle that spread the light of God and the Torah to the entire world. And ultimately, it's kind of a mirror in front of us to be like, okay, this guy is just saying like, I'm doing what my father wants. I'm doing what my father sent me to do. I'm coming to tell you that you're being immoral and hypocritical, and that you're focusing on all the wrong things. And I know you're going to kill me because this is the kind of people you are. And of course they kill him, right? So, you
Mm.
know, okay, like that's the
Yeah.
story. It's pretty revealing. It's revealing about human nature. And I understand the concept, that if like God were to come in the
Mm.
form of a man, you'd kill him too. So like it's a
Right.
pretty powerful concept. At the same time, I wouldn't want to cause detriment to my faith, which again, like when you see Yahweh, like you should be afraid. Like Yahweh's like, I
Right.
am Yahweh, your God, and there is one God, and you better not worship other gods. And if someone tells you,
Mm.
oh, there's another God, and his name is Jesus, and there's actually not one God but three gods, of course the three is one, and Jesus is Yahweh. I get it, but also like that's not what the Torah says, and I understand that
Right.
you can see the progression and the connection there, and I understand that, but I just I do you understand like my concern of like putting myself in that position. I find to
No, I
be
definitely get it. Right.
genuinely
Yeah.
scary. I find it to be scary,
No,
genuinely.
I get like the worry for idolatry is real. Right. No, I totally get that. Nowhere in the New Testament do we get tritheism, that we get three gods. So even
Mhm.
like Matthew 28:19 says that you shall baptize them in the name singular of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So it is one name shared among the three persons, and that name is Yahweh. So all over the New Testament, Jesus is called Kyrios, which in the Alexa in the Septuagint, that is a stand-in for Adonai, which is a stand-in for Yahweh. So we actually get multiple times in the New Testament where Jesus is explicitly called Yahweh, where it's quoting like Isaiah. So like Matthew 3:3 is quoting Isaiah 43, which says, make way for Yahweh. And it applies it to Jesus. And it says like make way for Yahweh. And it's specifically talking to Jesus. And then also Jesus says, why do you call me Kyrios, Kyrios? Why do you call me Adonai, Adonai, and yet not obey me? And in that context, Jesus is quoting from the tradition of whenever you translate Adonai, you translate it to Kyrios. Well, he's quoting from a passage that says Yahweh Adonai. So he's saying like, hey, why do you call me Yahweh and yet disobey me? So his disciples believe he is God, the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, and that there's also this, obviously I and the Father are one, and those type of things where you get the oneness of God. And in First Corinthians, we have God. Paul is actually re-giving the Shema, but he includes Jesus in the Shema. So it's interesting language that he uses Jesus as part of the Shema
Yeah,
with the
but I
Father.
mean, that's essentially just reading it in reverse, though. Like he's reading Jesus back
Right.
into the Shema, and like the Shema is the
Right.
staple of the Torah, which is like Yehovah one. Like that's what you walk away
Mhm.
from the Shema, and then
Right.
you finish with Christianity, and you're like Yehovah, Jesus, Holy Ghost, three, but also one, and it
Right.
is like it's not it goes removes from the simplicity of the Torah, and again, even things like baptism, right? Like the Torah doesn't give a commandment of baptism. The same way I'm sitting here
Right.
shitting on mikvahs, like I'm gonna shit on
Right.
baptism. Like it's not
Right.
the law of the Torah. Like
Mm.
what am I supposed to tell you? Like the reality is that that's how this is structured. Like you cannot add or subtract to the commandments, and that's just that's just how I see it. And like I
No, I get that.
understand. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's it's genuinely coming out of a place of fear, and I believe though that like if God really did do the sacrifice for humanity, if I
Right.
believe in Yahweh, then I will receive the benefit of His sacrifice for humanity. Like is it
Right.
that's why I'm kind of arguing with you on this like
So the New
professed
Testament
belief.
actually argues against that a little bit, where so Jesus in John, John 8, it talks about how if you unless you believe that I am, you will be dead in your sins. So we get that in he's obviously quoting Exodus 3:14 there, where he brings up the Eosha. he's quoting the Anihu of Isaiah like 48:12, where Anihu, I am the first, I'm the last, I'm the Alpha, the Omega. I am the creator of the universe. I'm the one that stretched out the heavens in Isaiah. So he's quoting himself to be the creator of the universe, and says, unless you believe that I am God, you will be dead in your sins. So according to Jesus's words there, there's this real danger, this real warning against not actively believing that Yeshua is Yahweh. And in Romans 10:9, it has similar language of, unless you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Yahweh and believe he died for your sins, you will not be saved. Or if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Yahweh and believe he died for your sins, you will be saved.
Well, I mean, it's a genuine dilemma, right? Because if you,
Right.
According to the Torah, the way I read it, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is God, then you are deserving of death.
You would be right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if, according to the New Testament, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is not God, then you're deserving of death. So,
Right.
shit, right? So you kind of,
Yeah. You kind of have to pick one. So there's a real dilemma there. So it's not like you can follow Yahweh under your system and be saved under my system.
right.
It's two opposite systems, but
Would
we would
you-
believe that it's
Right.
part of the new covenant. Go
Okay,
ahead.
but I mean, if I just say I believe in Yahweh and whatever
Mhm.
he did in this world is true, and let that stand. It's not for me to decide. It's not for me to know. I just believe in him and whatever he does. According to you, that includes Jesus. According to me, it includes
Right.
whatever I don't know. Would you acknowledge,
Right.
though, that every time in the Bible it refers to the sons of God, it's not God? It always refers to
No.
like angels
Right.
or some other
Right.
beings. So
Yeah.
that's another kind of twist in the New Testament where the Son of God suddenly is God. That's
So
not
that's actually a misconception. The Son of God title is not the divine title of Jesus. The Son of Man is the divine title of Jesus, because he's quoting himself from Daniel 7.
okay, but that seems even less godly. The Son of Man.
Have you read Daniel 7 recently?
No, I haven't. But Daniel 7 is not the Torah. Let's just.
Well, I mean, okay, yes, sure, it's not the Torah, but it is the prophets.
Yeah, but
I
the
mean,
Torah says
you know
if
that.
a prophet comes to you and tells you to worship other gods, you shouldn't, and he's actually a false
Right.
prophet. So
Right.
like that's the standard of Deuteronomy 13.
Right. So would you say Daniel is not a prophet?
Well, is Daniel saying that the Son of Man is God, or is he very
I
honored?
can.
Is he very honored in the heavenly court? Because those are two different
I
things, right?
will. I'll show it.
We see in the book of Joshua, there's a like the commander of God's army comes and meets him with his sword drawn. That's still not
Right.
God, like.
I would say that is God, actually, personally.
mean,
But
he's
that's a different. I would say that's Jesus
commander-
pre-incarnate.
Sure,
Yeah.
you would, but it's the commander of,
Yeah.
of Jehovah's army. That seems like
Right.
some
Yeah.
being who's commanding the
Yeah.
army of the God of legions.
Mhm.
But yeah, again, like if Daniel says that there is a different God other than Yahweh, then yeah, he's a false prophet.
Well, I'm just curious what you do with this passage here, because this is what Jesus is quoting from for himself.
Daniel
So it
9?
says Daniel 7. Daniel 9 is the messianic prophecy of like the 490 years.
Right.
Here we have from like 9 onward. The context is it's on Judgment Day. So if you want to start back at the beginning, so we get context. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was laying in bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. Daniel said, "In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven, churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had wings of an eagle. I watched till its wings were torn off, and was lifted from the ground, so that it stood on 2 feet like a human being, and the mind of a human was given to it. And there before me was the second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, 'Get up and eat your fill of flesh.' After that, I looked, and there before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard, and on its back had 4 wings like those of a bird. This beast had 4 heads, and was given authority to rule. After that, in my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was a 4th beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. It had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims, and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being, and a mouth that spoke boastfully. As I looked, the thrones, plural, were placed and set, And the Ancient of Days took his seat, singular. So there's multiple thrones there. His clothing was white as snow. The hair of his head was white like wool. His throne was flaming with fire, and its wheels were all ablaze. A river of fire was flowing, coming out from under or from before him. Thousands upon thousands attended him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were opened. So this is like Judgment Day. Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority but were allowed to live for a period of time. In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed.
Okay.
So this is who Jesus is claiming to be.
I understand, but he's not the Ancient of Days. The whole point is the Ancient of Days. Even in the New Testament, Jesus is saying, I am here, sent by my Father. I am bound by his authority. He's the only one who knows the end times. He's the one who invests me with this authority. Right. So even according to this prophecy that there is some divine being, the Son of Man, who's, a divine being born of a woman, who therefore makes him the Son of God and the Son of Man, he's not God. I'm not getting the impression here that he's God. I'm getting the impression that he's seated next to God. The Ancient of Days clearly refers to the Father, refers to the original God. Yeah. The fact that he's ancient means that he's from the beginning, and the Son who's begotten is a product of him. Even if God chooses to give dominion of heaven and earth to his Son, according to Daniel, or according, whoever the Son of Man is, that's not saying that that Son is now God. So for you to worship that Son of Man as God, that's not what I'm getting out of this passage.
Well, so he has some qualities that are only bestowed upon God, like coming with the clouds of heaven is in the Psalms a thing that only Yahweh does. There's at least like 6 different sections in the Psalms that talk about how Yahweh is the one who comes on the clouds. So we have him coming on the clouds of heaven, and he was led into the presence of Yahweh in the throne room where there was multiple thrones, possibly taking one of the thrones sitting next to the Ancient of Days. And he was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. But why are they worshiping him? And why is his dominion everlasting? If he's eternal, or he's like an infinite lifespan forward.
He's clearly not a human, right? Although he is the Son of Man. So that's kind of this tension.
So he looks like a human, but he doesn't have the properties of a human. So what is this?
Yeah, I get it. It's genuinely a concern to me. I'm not a follower of Daniel. I'm a follower of Moses. I'm just going to make that abundantly clear. And I find the theology of Moses to be far superior to whatever vague vision this is. Remember even the quote you quoted earlier of Moses, his brother and sister mocking him with the Cushite woman, and they said, we're prophets too. God says, I don't speak to Moses in riddles and visions of the night. I speak to him mouth to mouth, face to face, as a man speaks to his fellow. The level of communication between God and Moses is unparalleled to the other prophets. And the reality is, if this is true, that there is a Son of Man who God gives all dominion to for everlasting eternity, and everyone worships him, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's weird. Like, I don't have an answer. I'm not in Daniel's mind. I'm just saying that the reality is that from the Torah standard in Deuteronomy 13, if you are told to worship another God, then you are going against that. And again, like, that includes trying to group a different God into the original God. Like, again, like, I didn't keep reading in the Nicene Creed, but I think it's interesting how, like, it starts off with this perfect, clean Torah statement: one God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, all things visible and invisible. And then it kind of like devolves into just like Christian theology, which is, and I believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son, born of the Father before all the ages, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, co-substantial with the Father, right? So through him all things were made. So it becomes this kind of like mind game at this point, as if I'm like trying to like transubstantiate and cohabitate, with like the eternal one. Like, I don't understand any of this. I'm just letting you know, like, I don't know what's going on.
No, I get that. Yeah.
And Daniel's giving us a glimpse into a vision that he had, where the Ancient of Days clearly is in some superior place to the Son of Man. I think that's abundantly clear
Right.
from reading that
Yeah.
passage. Even again in the New Testament, Jesus is constantly saying how he's subservient to his Father. And yes, he does
Correct.
make claims like this, like I am the way, I am the dominion, I am the power. But
The
he's
Lord of the
really
Sabbath.
saying what's that?
The Lord of the Sabbath.
Right, but what he's really saying is, I'm doing this in the name of the Father. So I guess the real question is, do you believe that this is the Father's will? And again, like I just have to repeat, what does that change in my day to day life? Like if Jesus comes back riding on the clouds and says, I'm the King, and it's abundantly clear that that's the case, we'll have to deal with it then. But the reality is that, first of all, I'm just full disclosure here. I don't want that to be true. And if it is true, it's true. But I want to be in my individual relationship with the Father. I don't like the idea of like worshiping this other character. I don't like that idea. I'm glad that it's only in Daniel in the New Testament, because it doesn't make me see it with the authority of the Torah. Again, if that is God's will, I am fully powerless in the face of God, and that's what God wants. That's what He wants. I'm just saying that in the law of Moses, I'm given more hope as an individual, that like I have a personal relationship with God. There are things that I can do tactically that will improve my life, and God Himself will reach out to me and bless me and help me. And there isn't an intermediary, and there isn't this secondary figure that operates as the way to Yahweh or the way to the Father, or who I have to worship Him because He has dominion. I don't know. I don't like it. That's all I'm saying. And again, I get it. Like from your perspective, that's blasphemy. From my perspective, this is blasphemy. So, and by the way, you have a good point. Like when you read this to a Jew, like there's no way they have a good response to this. By the way, like this is very clearly Christology. As I see it, and like I guess their only argument would be like Jesus didn't achieve the final redemption, so He can't be the Messiah, which is true. But also, then your response would be, He's coming back, which is really no better than their response, which is the Messiah is coming. You say the Messiah is coming back. It really amounts to this.
In the Old Testament, to be fair, there are two comings of the Messiah. So you have the coming on the colts, and you have coming on the clouds. So the way that the rabbinics interpret it is, if we're worthy, He'll come on the clouds. If we're unworthy, He'll come on the colts. But I would just say that He was always going to do both. So they're just
I see your point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, like there's certainly something going on here. So I'm not about to reject it, and I feel no need to, like the way the rabbis are, like they kind of have the need to hate
fight
Jesus.
against it all the time.
Yeah, like as if it's something to hate or something that's so evil. As if like what they're doing is not the exact same thing. Sitting here, worshiping rabbis and waiting for the Messiah to come. I don't really see how that's any different. So really, the only thing I can say is that I just think the Torah says like there's only one God. You follow Him. You don't follow anyone else, and that your path to redemption is through Him. And to me, it would be blasphemy to reference another name, to reference another entity, to break down the unity into a trinity, to bring up the Son in the presence of the Father, to say that He is my King and I should worship Him. That it flies in the face of everything the Torah says, everything the Torah tells me, which is to worship the one God who is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, and your salvation comes through Him, and you achieve that through positive action. I think, though, that at the end of the day, both me and you can agree that we need to do what's right in this present moment, and we need to help each other get closer to the truth, and the truth will be revealed. God will tell us what's right and what's wrong, and all of my ideas are going to have to bow down to God. All of your ideas are going to have to bow down to God, and ultimately, we're all just beholden to the truth. So, I guess that leaves us to find out. As I told you last time, I think it's Deuteronomy 18:22, I believe, says, if you want to know if a prophecy is true, see if it comes true. So, just wait. Just wait. Like in the meantime, what are you going to do while you're waiting? You're just going to sit back and wait, or are you going to actually get some things done to hasten the coming of this moment where we can actually see real judgment take place, where we can see God's concealed face revealed, and we can start to have more clarity on all these things, and like that's just the bottom line. I guess.
Yeah. I do have two questions. So first question would be, do you think God is eternally loving?
Yeah. Yeah. I think God
Uh,
is like pretty much eternally everything.
okay.
So,
How was he loving before creation?
um, well, God in his nature, in his essence, he possesses the attributes of existence. And so creation is just a manifestation of God himself, it would seem. Like he speaks his words and his ideas
Right.
come to fruition,
Come
but
into being. Right.
his ideas and his desires and his words are what is contained within his nature and his essence. Also, the creation of this earth is not necessarily the beginning of time, right? So I think
Mhm.
that's an important thing to point out. Like even the creation story in Genesis itself almost doesn't tell us that the earth itself was created on the first day, because God comes to an earth that's desolate, chaotic, and full of water, and then he
Void. Right.
creates light.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the earth pre-existed creation, if you want to read it that way, which would explain the scientific dilemma why the earth seems so ancient. Um, but
Mm,
that's a different point. The bottom line is,
mm,
though, that um, you know, God exists in eternity, and we have no idea what happened before us or what will happen after us or what's happening right now in other places. All we know, again, is what's happening right here, right now. So it seems like
right.
that's what God wants us to focus on. Like, why does the Torah not talk about the afterlife? Why does the Torah not talk about outer space or the seventh heaven? Like it doesn't, because it just talks about the here and the now, and that's what God wants us to focus on. The same way God doesn't want us to sit here talking about who the priest is and what the like. He wants us to talk about what are we supposed to focus on right now. But I think, yeah, God is eternally loving, but he's also eternally judgmental and eternally everything. He's
Right.
eternally
Yeah.
everything.
Right.
Like it would be
Yeah.
hard to limit him to one characteristic.
Yeah. So I think the Trinity actually explains, or like does a better job of displaying those eternal attributes than just strict. I mean, because Trinity is monotheism, so just strict Unitarianism. Because the Father can be eternally loving to the Son can be eternally loving to the the Holy Spirit can be eternally loving to the Father. Like you have family, you have community, you have love
Where's the
within
mother?
God.
Where's the mother and the
There's no
sister?
mother. There isn't one.
Well, look,
But
I mean,
again, like God is
human
not gendered.
beings.
God is not sexual. So like Yahweh doesn't have a sex.
Well, yeah, that's another
Jesus
point.
does
Right?
because he became a human, but Yahweh doesn't have a sex.
Right.
So like the title Father is symbolic. It's not literal
I understand, but I'm just
because
saying
God
that
wants us to be masculine.
how do you limit the Godhead to those three attributes? Like again,
Right.
that's the real problem here. Is what about love? What about the spirit of love?
Right. But
So is
does
that
that
that's
actually
the love is
does that
what's
manifest as a
communicating
personhood? Does love have a personhood to it? Would be the question.
only holiness and fatherness and sonness. I mean, human beings are
No,
created
I
in the
wouldn't say
image of God.
holiness was it, but
Human
yeah,
beings are created in the image of God, male and female. So
right.
I mean, like, what
But
about the
we're
feminine?
also we have a body, soul, and a spirit. We have three parts to us.
I mean, we also have
Uh,
we also have a breath. I mean,
yeah, but that's just part of the spirit.
we also have a
Remember
heart.
correctly.
What about the heart? Heart and soul, return to God,
So
heart and
again,
soul. I mean, there's three,
right.
there's four, there's five, there's 10, there's
I mean,
seven.
again, but you could say like again, we are made in the image of God, but we have a bunch of different parts. Even if you want to say it's greater than three, like even
Exactly.
if you want to reject the greater than three for God, even though I don't think we have a reason to in the New Testament or in the Old Testament, because we do have those things like the benedict, like we went over this last time with the benediction of the God, the angel.
Yeah,
Um,
which obviously I told
but
you I've read since the time I was a child, and it never occurred to me to
right,
read it as a Trinity. I read it as the God of my fathers, who is my God, who sent his messenger to protect me from all evil. So I mean, again, like
right,
the Torah itself doesn't lend itself to that interpretation. And again, the
right.
Torah describes multiple attributes of God, all the way from love to hate to sadness to fire to spirit to, I mean, it's just infinite. It's infinite. That's why I think the fact that we're given the number one is the revelation. Otherwise, there's no
Mm,
revelation, because we would just think that God is an infinite, I guess, just pieces of a puzzle
keeps going
spiraling
forever and ever and ever.
in opposite
Right.
directions. But the fact that we're
Yeah.
introduced to unity within all because you can isolate so many different attributes of existence, things like power, lust, you know,
Mm,
love, pain, suffering. I mean, there's so many attributes, both physical and metaphysical, emotional, spiritual. It's so vast that I just think it's reductionist to limit it to three. I don't see
yeah.
the proof for that in existence or
Right.
in the Torah.
Would you at least say it's a binity because we have a Yahweh on earth and a Yahweh in heaven in the Torah?
I mean, again, Yahweh, I don't think is limited to time and space. And I think like,
Okay, so you would just say that it's both the Father in heaven and the Father on earth in like Genesis 19.
well, yeah, it's the same entity, and clearly that
Okay.
entity allows clearly that entity is a creator, so he doesn't remain in the solitude of his lordship. He
Right.
creates, as it said there in the Daniel thing, right? There's like thousands and hundreds of thousands ministering to him. So
Before him.
it's
Right.
the Lord of hosts, right? So he's creating
Mm,
legions of whether they're
right.
humans or non-humans or animals or planets or universes. It seems like God has an itch to create, which is kind of a beautiful thing as well. Although
Mm.
obviously God's creation is perfect, and so it's wonderful. But yeah, I think Yahweh's, I don't know, he can be everywhere all at once. I don't know.
What about the Yahweh who wrote the tablets versus the Yahweh who passed before him in the rock?
Why is that different? Why is that a different character?
Because he ate in front of the presence of the Yahweh who wrote on the rock, and he couldn't be in the presence of the Yahweh who passed before him. So it's just like he restricted his glory at one time, but also the Yahweh who wrote on the rock calls and he like gives this praise to the Yahweh that comes and passes before him as he's coming. So if you read that, it's Yahweh praising Yahweh and saying, "Here comes Yahweh, the Holy One," and then he ushers him, and then yet that Yahweh is the one that hides Moses with his hand, and the other Yahweh is passing by.
I mean,
So how do you?
that's an arbitrary reading of it. The way I read it is that God passed by Moses and he called out in the name of Yahweh, as in he called out in his own name. As you see, like he tells Moses, I'm going to let you know my name, Yahweh. Whereas to the
Right,
patriarchs, I acted them with El Shaddai. When God
right.
calls out in his own name, he's saying, this is who I am. This is my attribute. I'm passing my goodness before you, and you will only be able to see my back. And I think the understanding there is that although, because it also says Moses encountered Yahweh face to face. But the point is that
Mm,
I think that the message there is that as close as a man can get to God, you can never truly
mm,
encounter him face to face, right? And so that's the idea, is that ultimately God is beyond our comprehension and our ability to experience him face to face, because the face to face experience is the full encounter. Like, I see you for who you are, right?
right.
Versus the back is
Yeah.
like, God's like, don't worry, like everything I pass by you is goodness, first of all, which is also beautiful, right? Like everything
Mm,
of God is goodness. And you will see from behind, you'll see the back, which is, you can't really decipher what's going on, but you know that it's good. And after the fact, like you can see it, and you'll be able to understand. But I just want to read that passage so that I can show you how I read it.
yeah.
It's
So
Exodus.
Exodus 32
Let's see.
or 31? 31.
Let's see. Um,
Oh no,
it's 33.
34, 33 and 34.
So it's chapter 33, verses 17 through 23. Okay.
Yeah.
So is that correct? Do you have the same print?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So,
so so Exodus 33, 17 through 23. Yahweh said to Moses, also this matter that you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my eyes, and I have known you by name. This is referring to Moses' request that Yahweh walk with Israel. And Moses
right.
said, please show me your glory. And he said, I will pass all of my goodness before your face, and I will call out in the name of Yahweh before you, and I will favor who I will favor, and I will pity who I will pity. So again, God is saying, like, ultimately I'm going to decide who I take mercy on and who I favor, but I'll pass before you. And he said, you cannot see my face, because no man can see my face and live. So God is saying,
Hmm.
like, you want to see my glory, I'll call out in the name of
Right.
Yahweh, I'll pass by you, but you're not going to see my face. And again, the face referring to the absolute confrontation with God full on. Um,
Hmm.
so Yahweh said, behold, there's a place, designated place, stand here on the rock. And when my glory passes by, I'll place you in the crevice of the rock and cover you with my palm until I pass. And I will remove my palm, and you will see my back, and you will not see my face. So yeah, again,
Right.
I don't see separate entities talking here. I see a singular entity. I see a singular entity saying, "This is my glory. I will pass by you. I will call out in the name of Yahweh." But ultimately,
So do you want to keep
you will
reading
not
for a
see my
second?
face.
Go to verse 5, the next chapter.
Yeah.
So 34:5.
Yeah, same thing. He comes down in the cloud, stood with him, and called out in the name of Yahweh. So you're saying that Yahweh stood with him and called out in the name of Yahweh?
Well, no, it keeps going. It says, proclaiming Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, forgiving weakness, rebellion, and sin. Yeah, he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of their parents to the third and fourth generation. Why is he talking in the third person other in
Well,
this instance?
I mean, that happens multiple times in the Torah, right? God says,
Right,
Yahweh has spoken. But that's normal
right,
because he's referring to himself as God. So he's saying, like, this is the nature of Yahweh. I am telling you about myself. This is the nature of Yahweh in the abstract. So I think that's normal to see God speaking in the third person. And we see just right before that God is saying, I will call out in the name of Yahweh, as in that is my name, the name that I'm presenting myself to you with, the name that defines existence. And I'm telling you that existence is fundamentally good and forgiving and loving, and that is who I am truly. And I will
right.
stand with you and make that proclamation about myself, as in Yahweh in the abstract is these things. But look, I understand your point, and you're pointing to a thing that's overlooked in Judaism, which is the level of interactiveness that Yahweh has with people, like standing with you, like calling out to you, saying these things. I think that that's a very important point. But at the same time, I'm not seeing the separation here in deity, because again, like, you cannot separate God from himself, or you can't separate God from existence. I think it's just like,
Right.
God is interacting with us on many, many levels. So I think there's a lot of beauty to that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the Moses speaking to God face to face in the same chapter, that's
Again, you'd have to say that there's a difference between face to face is figurative, as in like direct communication. But when it comes to
okay.
actually encountering God face to face, like actually, that's impossible.
Well, it does say that as Moses went out into the tent, the pillar of cloud would come down and stay at the entrance while Yahweh spoke to Moses.
Right.
So it
again,
seems to be literal. It seems to be
well,
actually happening there.
of course, the pillar of cloud, but are you going to tell me the pillar of cloud is the entirety of Yahweh? To encounter Yahweh
No,
face
but
to
Yahweh was within it.
Of course, yeah. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you that Yahweh manifests in physical matter, and meets people and meets Moses face to face. But the story there about God saying, you cannot see my face and live, that's referring to the true face of Yahweh. Like the cloud, a pillar of cloud is not the true face of Yahweh. The pillar of cloud is a lower grade manifestation of Yahweh to a degree. But if we're talking about, and again, Moses is speaking to the Lord as one would speak to his fellow, right? It's a face to face means direct communication. But when it comes to literally witnessing God face to face, obviously that's impossible. And that's kind of the message that Yahweh is telling Moses. As close as we are, as much of me as you've seen, when it comes to the full comprehension, to the full envisioning of God, that would be impossible as a human being. Which should tell us something too, with all these conversations we're having about the true nature of God. Can we truly see God face to face? Can we truly comprehend God? Is this even within our realm and scope as human beings to encounter the God Most High, the living God, face to face, and say, I can see and identify God's characteristics and who He is and how He looks and what He's about? That in and of itself seems very arrogant, and even Moses himself was not capable of that. So I think that should just make us stop for a minute and be like, okay, maybe we don't know everything about what's happening in heaven, and maybe we should just, dial it back and try not to murder each other for another day.
Yeah. The way that Christians would interpret that would be the Yahweh that we can see is Christ. The Yahweh that we can't see is the Father. So that would be the separation there. Like, why is there a Yahweh that can physically interact in the world? Why is there a Yahweh that can't physically interact with the world without it, like, ceasing to exist? And it's like the Father is the one who can't fully come into reality without it, like, because it's all about how Yahweh, like, the Father is a blinding light, If Yahweh is literally a blinding light, then him coming into the world might be like dissolving all of reality, because we know a very high energy light literally dissolves things.
Right.
But
Mhm.
yeah, so that
Okay.
we would just interpret the Yahweh. So like the Yahweh that ate with Abraham
Right.
in Genesis 18,
Doesn't
that
that
would
by
be
definition still
literally
make it?
physical.
Okay, I understand it, but doesn't that still by
Yeah.
definition make it an emanation of Yahweh or a lesser degree being?
Right.
So
So
it
we would say that the Son is subservient to the Father,
right. So, but
but that they're
it's not
one being together.
idolatry. But it's not idolatry to worship the angel, for example.
No, because the angel is Yahweh, which we have the angel called Yahweh in Genesis.
Yeah. Oh, again, like you even see Jacob bowing down to his brother. So bowing down.
Right.
Because
It's not
did
necessarily
Jacob,
worship.
yeah, did Jacob think that Esau was God? He said it's like
No.
seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, and
Right.
you can imagine Jacob saw the face of God the night before. So to him, he
Right.
witnessed his brother as being like that powerful,
Right.
which is fascinating. And we can get into that whole thing where the rabbis demonize Esau to a ridiculous degree, even though Esau is
Yeah, it's
actually
crazy.
quite
Yeah.
a good character, by
Right.
for most accounts. But anyhow, yeah, it just comes back to the incomprehensibility of it all. And ultimately, I think we all
Right.
agree that we should worship the Most High. That's how Yahweh's characterized. So even if even if Yahweh sends a messenger to interact with him, and that messenger is true, like even Moses is a messenger of God. He's a human being, but he's a messenger of
Mhm.
God in the fullest capacity. Like there is no break between him and God, and the only time there was even a slight break where God tells him talk to the rock, and he doesn't talk to the rock, it's over. Moses is no longer going into the promised land, right? So
Mm.
there is something about that even if this messenger is the perfect messenger of Yahweh, it's like don't shoot the messenger. In this case, don't worship the messenger, right? Like he's the messenger for a
Although that
reason.
the messenger is literally called Yahweh in Genesis 16. So she says, "You are the Yahweh who sees me."
Where is this?
In
Oh,
Genesis 16, it's Hagar.
Hagar.
Yeah.
Hagar.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But there's other places where he's literally called Yahweh. So in Judges it happens several times too.
Right. No, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand your point that the messenger himself is kind of like the perfect example of Yahweh, and it's like that's how Christians would interpret Jesus in that same capacity. At the same time, it's like you know why change the name? Why change the number? That would be my main gripes with it.
Right.
Like
Yeah, our position would be it never changed. It was always that way. He just there
well,
was
not
hints
in
to it rather than
any
being as explicit.
not in any revealed
Right.
capacity. So if we're told to,
Right.
again, Deuteronomy 29:29 or 29:28, the hidden things are to Yahweh, the revealed things are to you, as is
Mm.
written in the Torah. If I'm going to follow what's revealed in this Torah, I'm not revealed the name of the Son, for example, or the name, or like any
Right.
individual characteristics
Although
of.
Yeshua does pop up back there. I'm just saying. I
I
mean,
mean,
obviously it's
yeah,
salvation.
the word
The
Yeshua means
word Yeshua is
salvation. So
salvation.
again, yeah, all
Right.
this stuff is doublespeak at the end of the day. Oh, Yahweh is the
Right.
salvation. Hmm,
Right.
right?
Just
Right?
saying, man. Just saying.
But
Yeah.
is the
No, I get
salvation
that.
Yahweh? It's an interesting question, right? Like
Yes.
if Yahweh
Uh,
is the salvation, but is the salvation Yahweh, or is that like only an aspect, right? Salvation is an aspect
mm,
of existence. Like there's existence is existential. It goes beyond
mm,
just one element. So again, I think that everything comes from God. Even Isaiah talks about evil. God created evil too, So like, where do you
right.
think everything comes from? Who created the serpent in the garden? Right? Who created all of this? Like, there is the Ancient of Days, the one where all of this emanates from, and He is giving power to who He sees fit. And we'll have to accept His judgments whether we like it or not. So, I'm sure we'll like it.
Sure.
I think God's judgments are always fair and righteous. And again, we know what we know. We don't know what we don't know, and uh, what will happen remains to be seen. And
Mm.
today we have what's revealed, and let's
Let's do what we can with
stick
it.
to that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
says you
Yeah.
Deuteronomy 4, I believe. You who cling to Yahweh your God, you are all alive today. So let's try to
Yeah.
stay alive.
Do you deny theophanies, or do you just think that not all of those were theophanies? I don't remember your position on that.
You're gonna have to tell me what theophanies is.
Physical appearance of God in this world.
No, of course I don't deny that. I think that's an
Okay.
absurdity of Jewish theology that denies.
Yeah, rabbinic schism. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's purely Maimonides actually, who's the source of that
Yeah.
idea.
That's from Islam a little bit.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, the Torah couldn't be clearer, and I think that that actually is very comforting to know that our existence is connected to the spiritual reality. We're not disconnected from God,
Mm,
and the fact that God
mm,
can manifest in physical matter means that physical matter is not so physical and disgusting as religious people would have you believe, which is something that all religions demonize physicality and sexuality and matters of the flesh because somehow it's disconnected from spirituality. When in the Torah's view, they seamlessly fade into each other, and like you
right.
can have the Most High God, in a burning bush one day, and like in a man wrestling you the next night, and somehow
Right.
somehow it all makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. I think it means that we're living
Yeah.
a spiritual existence. We're not living, because that's Maimonides claims that if God were
We're all
to
physical.
manifest, yeah, Maimonides claims that if God were to manifest in physical reality, he would not be infinite. Like he would lose his power as God if he manifested in physical matter. And to me, it's like, okay, so because your mind can't track that,
Conceive
therefore
of it.
God
Yeah.
can't do it, right? Okay, so you're
Mm,
limiting God based off of your own philosophy, which is insane because you're basically saying God can't do that. It's like, well, God can do whatever he wants. Isn't that the whole idea here?
correct.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
so,
Anything that's logically possible. Yeah. So
yeah.
the only other section I would get your opinion on would be Genesis 22. Now, obviously, someone brought up in the chat that Proverbs 34, which is what is his name and what is his son's
Yeah.
name, but I don't
I
think
will.
you
I will
elevate Proverbs
just.
to the same level as Torah.
I would just refer
Right.
back to that. And he's also saying
Right.
that who knows, right? Who knows, as in like, who
Right.
knows, So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I again, who knows? I'll keep it at that. Um,
Right.
of course, the
So
Christian will be
the
like, I
the
know.
thing so the thing I find interesting in here is the blending between Yahweh and the angel of Yahweh. And also, what is the blessing here from your opinion? So I'm curious what you do with the blending of this. So he goes out to slay his son, and then the angel of Yahweh calls out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am replied, do not lay a hand on the boy. He said, do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, so othering, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. So somehow the angel of Yahweh is like involved in the withholding of Isaac. Then Abraham looked up and in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. Again, I would point to Jesus for all of this. I'd point to typology for much of how Genesis points to Jesus. But even beyond that, he went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord will be provided. The angel of the Lord again called out to heaven, or to Abraham from heaven a second time, and said, I swear by myself, declares Yahweh, that because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. So obviously this last bit you can just easily interpret as the declaration of Yahweh not has anything to do with the angel of Yahweh. I'm curious what you do with the from me, and I'm also curious to see what you think about what is the blessing to all nations on the earth through Abraham's seed. Because obviously as Christians we believe that this would be Jesus, ultimately this would be the Messiah fulfilling all of it.
Right. I mean, again, I see this as the angel of Yahweh. I mean, you can ask why did an angel come when Yahweh was originally the one who told Abraham? And clearly, Abraham's
Right.
giving the same authority to the angel as he does to Yahweh, because Yahweh told him
Right.
to sacrifice Isaac, and the angel of Yahweh told him to stop sacrificing Isaac, and he took that as enough of a reason, to stop. So, yeah,
Right.
but still, the angel is speaking, declares Yahweh in the name of Yahweh. I mean,
Right.
why will the nations bless themselves by the seed of Abraham? I mean, that's stated as the blessing to his offspring, not just to a single man of his offspring, but to
Correct.
his
Right.
offspring in general. I mean, has Israel lived up to that entirely? Obviously not. Is the story over? No. Are the people who follow his law, as we discussed earlier, people who enter the covenant, they are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham's the father of multitudes of nations. The people that follow the path of Abraham which was to follow the path of Yahweh, they are a blessing to the world. Abraham's offspring are a blessing to the world. Christ was one of Abraham's offspring, but only one of them. Technically, we're all Abraham's offspring if we choose to follow in the way of Yahweh, which is what Abraham stood for anyway. Abraham was making souls, in Haran. So, you can make a soul, you make him anew, born again, as you discussed, by following God in righteousness. So, yeah, I don't think it points exclusively to Jesus. I mean, Jesus would be an example of a Jew who was the vehicle for God's grace to spread to the world. But I think that it's referring to the larger expanse of Abraham's seed, not just Jesus, but Israel in its entirety, as well as and the angel speaking in the name of God.
Okay, so you just say like the blessing that was given is the Torah through the Jews to humanity?
I mean, the Torah is certainly a huge part of it, but it's the legacy of Abraham. I mean, the Torah is kind of like the perfected legacy of the way of Yahweh. The way of Yahweh is righteousness and judgment. Where can you look for clear principles of righteousness and judgment that were revealed to the descendants of Abraham? Would be the Torah. So that's certainly, but as it says in Genesis, God says, "I've known Abraham because he will show his offspring the way of Yahweh, which is to do righteousness and justice." So that's the way of Yahweh. That's the blessing to the world, and I think the door is open for all of us to become that blessing.
So you view it similar to Genesis 3 with the seed of the woman shall crush the head of the snake. You view that more as like humanity itself crushing the head of the snake rather than one singular person from the seed.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So you're instead of centralizing it, you're just spreading it out to pretty much everyone.
Yeah, and anyone who takes the mantle of, a human being who is willing to interact with these important things in life, like conquering evil and performing justice.
Yeah.
So we all got to do that.
Right. I do think the greatest case we have for Yeshua in the Old Testament is typology. Which, so like the bronze serpent, for example, the bronze serpent is a weird little tail. Why is it that a serpent up on a pole will take away the death of the people who are bit by annoying God? Then Jesus actually points to himself as the bronze serpent in John 3:15. So like we get like shadows of what Christ was meant to do throughout all of it, but the more explicit stuff you obviously get in the prophets. So in the Torah itself, it is almost all typology, but there's a lot of it. Like you can point to every single figure of the Torah and say that they represent Jesus in a variety of different ways. But ultimately, it would just be the representation at every step, and then also the covenants. Then the prophets themselves are getting way more explicit with this like divine Messiah figure that will come. But
well, look, I see the symbolism.
Get your concern.
Yeah,
right.
I see the symbolism, and it's important, and we continue to write the story and be part of it and see God's plan unfold. So I pray we see it soon. I do got to go, but it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we can hang out or not end stream. Yeah. My brain.
All right, I appreciate you.
1 a.m.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
God bless you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Anything you want to say before we go?
I think we're good. How about you?
I think I'm good.
All right. Okay. Well, it's good night to everyone. Have a good one.
All right. Good night.